collaborators, researchers, participants, and students. My name is Ashwin Neri, and I'm an undergraduate science student and a research assistant in this project. And I come to this summit with a fervent belief in the transformative power of community engagement. I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. Thompson River University acknowledges the Tecumlipsh te Secwepemc and the Tahil within the Secwepemc Kulu reside on the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwepemc. We dedicate this program, the World Café Summit, and participate in the exhibit gallery. And if you have not already done so, kindly register for the World Café Summit over there. This program, the World Café Summit, is here to honor those who are living with cancer, their caregivers, and their healthcare practitioners, providing a space for reflection and solidarity in their fight against cancer. In the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Instead, it's the only thing that ever has. Let us be that community of practice. Let us be the catalyst of change, and let the Hall of Fame exhibit gallery at the World Café Summit be the canvas where our shared dreams and aspirations come to life. Now I would like to invite Heidi Coleman, Chief Executive Officer of the Royal Inland Hospital, to welcome us to unveil the World Café Summit today.
Okay, so imagine this. You are extremely nervous and can barely focus. The doctor comes in and tells you the difficult news about your diagnosis. You hear it like wah, 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 but thankfully your sister is sitting next to you and taking notes. You walk out the door and a patient navigator is waiting for you with a cup of herbal tea and leads you to a quiet area with comfortable seating for all. She has all your follow-up appointments in a little book that has all kinds of information, websites, calendars of events for supportive care programs, and the phone numbers. She goes over all the information and asks if you have any questions. She introduces you to Patricia, the social worker, and Carl, the psychosocial counselor. This is the current reality for patients in Montreal at the Jewish General Hospital and has been for the past 30 years. As opposed to the reality here in Kamloops from a patient I'll call Anne. I saw many physicians and specialists during my treatment, but none of them seemed to be connected to each other. At every appointment, I had to fill out another long form with all the information they needed time and time again. As the patient undergoing chemo, radiation, hormone therapy, and several reconstructive surgeries and suffering the many side effects, I was the one expected to be the link and record keeper. It was exhausting. In Kamloops, we have a very busy BC Cancer Centre providing chemotherapy on the 8th floor of the main building at Royal Inland Hospital. We currently have 4 oncologists and 3 GP oncologists. We need more, who are dedicated to their patients and to improving cancer care in Kamloops for the local community and people from all over our regional hospital district. Connie from Vavenby was receiving her 3rd chemo treatment for breast cancer, and I met her yesterday up on the 8th floor. She traveled 2 hours to Kamloops and will travel another 2 hours back home. And thankfully, she has a husband who's able to drive her. I also met Ashley up on the 8th floor, the new social worker, 3 days into her new position, because there's a lot of movement around in interior health. And I spoke with all the nurses and admin support. These are the healthcare professionals you would meet if you were receiving cancer treatment at the Royal Inland Hospital. But what you wouldn't see is a robust supportive care program at this BC Cancer Clinic on the 8th floor of Royal Inland Hospital. It is lacking. But thankfully, now we have the Kamloops Supportive Care Society, and they are successfully advocating for more supportive care, and we at the Royal Inland Hospital Foundation are working with them. The Kamloops Cancer Supportive Care Society was founded based on overwhelming evidence that supportive cancer care services can improve patient outcomes and their quality of life and decrease the burden on the healthcare system. but you probably all know this. It was formed by volunteer like-minded individuals with lived cancer experience, and it was formed to facilitate easier access to cancer supportive care for Kamloops and all patients, and to research the gaps in our system. They have done their research, and on their website, you can see the results of a patient survey regarding supportive care. And you'll hear things like patients said they were not able to access supportive services quickly, like counseling or support groups. And those who were successful often said they found it through word of mouth or by accident. One participant reported getting all her support and information from the Spirit Warriors Breast Cancer Survivor Dragon Boat team. Go Spirit Warriors, and they're represented here. Patients reported a variety of lasting physical side effects from their cancer and treatment, yet most patients reported not being referred to or informed of physiotherapy, massage, and counseling services. And almost all patients reported that their doctors were not equipped or overworked, or nor had the time to refer or connect them with support services. And many stated that they themselves took the information they gathered back to their doctor to give to other patients. I urge you to read all the survey results. I don't think you'll find any surprises. But the Cancer Supportive Care Society, they've got projects underway, and we at the Royal Inland Hospital Foundation would like to support them. They want to develop, implement, and maintain a sustainable Kamloops integrated community network for cancer supportive care. They want to develop regular support group systems for all cancers, like any day peer support, and they want to develop a legal support network and financial guidance network to help patients access the resources they need. And then, because I knew someone who knew someone, and that's how it seems to work, we now have Inspire Health virtually seeing patients in our region. You know, many people I know who attended Inspire Health programming in Kelowna after they finished their radiation treatment, they thought it was part of the BC Cancer Agency regular program. Like, after your radiation, please go this way, and you can go into a forum where they're going to teach you about dieting and what to eat, and they just thought it was part of BC Cancer. I couldn't understand why we didn't have that service here in Kamloops, and neither did Inspire Health. Inspire Health now provides medical, emotional, counseling, meditation, mindfulness, and physical, nutrition and exercise therapy, services online to all of the people in Kamloops and surrounding areas. And we do have intermittent in-person programs. We are helping get them more government funding to open a physical office in Kamloops. But in the meantime, the RIH Foundation has brought the LIVE program here to Kamloops twice already, and are hosting a third session this coming April. This 2-day program is absolutely free, thanks to 2 donors in Kamloops, and it's for up to 30 people living with cancer. We plan to continue offering a minimum of 2 programs a year. A strong supportive care program and the development of a truly integrated network for supportive care is needed here in Kamloops. This World Café is a great place to seek partners who would like to collaborate with us. And as you might be aware, on February 8th, we received the good news that we are finally going to get the long-awaited Radiation Therapy Cancer Center to be functional in 2028. The need for more supportive care and an integrative network where we all work together is needed now more than ever. I need to add supportive care to the fundraising campaign if in fact there is a gap and we need to fundraise for more things. Please contact me at the RIH Foundation or Leslie Brochu or Anne McCarthy at Kamloops Supportive Care Society. They're here today. Our contact information will be available after the summit. And this is a great forum for all of us to come together to establish and maintain the supportive care program we need and deserve. And as Harold P. Freeman said, no person with cancer should have to spend more time fighting their way through the cancer care system than fighting their disease. Thank you all. Have a great summit.
Now I would like to invite Colleen Foran, a volunteer, a BC cancer patient from the Family Experience Program, who's an ambassador of change, to come up and champion inclusivity, empathy, and collaboration in every facet of cancer care.
First of all, I would like to really thank all of you for the work that you are doing into living well with cancer. Excuse me. The biggest single problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. George Bernard Shaw reportedly said that, and today I'm here to talk to you about the importance of communication, of being heard. My name is Colleen. I'm an avid cyclist, downhill skier, pickleball player, longtime practitioner of yoga, and I was diagnosed with metastatic cancer just over 4.5 years ago now. For most of my career, I was immersed in studying and working with others on how we communicate. My story of cancer started with a diagnosis of stage 2 breast cancer in 2010. I was in the process of moving from Alberta to Vancouver, and my cancer was found completely by accident. I had requested that all my tests be updated before moving to Vancouver, but I never thought that anything would come of it. Although the initial tests were done in Alberta, I had to pick things up in Vancouver. My husband was already there and settling into a new job, and so I didn't want to worry him before I knew more. I felt really lost in the huge city, very new to me, no contacts, and no way into the healthcare system. I had to jump through many hoops to get further tests. Then the first time I met my wonderful new doctor, she had the very unwelcome task of telling me that I had cancer. She was so gentle and careful with how she communicated about my cancer that when I left her office, I felt like I could still function. I made an appointment to come back with my husband, but then I had to tell him. Telling my husband that I had cancer was the hardest thing to do because he had lost his mother to cancer 30 years previously. So that was 13 years ago, and I've lived with cancer since that time. My first meeting with my oncologist really helped. She was very direct and clear in her communication. She said, "It wasn't anything you did, it wasn't anything you didn't do. You just got cancer, and let's get on with treating it." I've replayed that over and over in my mind these many years. It was almost as if she heard without me saying that I had an incredible guilt for getting cancer. I went through surgery, chemo, radiation, hormone therapy, and I came through all of that really well. I was so grateful for the amazing treatment that I received from everyone at the cancer agency that I felt a strong desire to give back. This started my volunteer work with the Canadian Cancer Society Peer Support Program and the BC Cancer Agency's Patient and Family Experience Program. Through the Canadian Cancer Society Peer Program, I supported a couple of dozen women through their diagnoses and treatment for breast cancer. I heard so many stories, bore witness to their experience. It was a humbling experience. After about 7 or 8 years post-treatment, I was telling myself that I was done with cancer. But in reality, there was always that little voice in the back of my head that wondered. And it seemed that cancer wasn't done with me. In June of 2019, on my husband's and my 30th wedding anniversary, I went to my GP and told him that I was now having trouble eating and walking. We had been struggling to figure out what was going on with me for several months, and he said we'd better go up to the hospital to have a closer look. I spent most of the day on a gurney in the hallway. But then late in the afternoon, the GP came to me and said, "Is your husband in town? Can he come up to the hospital?" That's never a good sign. So when my husband arrived, my GP told us that the cancer had returned. And to be honest, I didn't react much to that because I didn't know what that meant. 1 week later, my husband and I were in Vancouver seeing my oncologist, who told us that not only was the cancer back, but it had metastasized to my liver. I wondered then, what does metastasize really mean? Oh, the cancer is incurable. It can be treated through palliative care. I think I stopped hearing much beyond those words, incurable and palliative. To me, palliative meant you're going to die, and soon. It was as if a cloud or a fog enveloped me, and I couldn't see or hear anything clearly, and I couldn't really comprehend anything. I had so many questions that I couldn't articulate at that moment. I wish I was in Montreal at that time, actually, now that I hear about that. My life had changed irrevocably, although I didn't realize it then. I didn't know where to turn to find out what it really meant to need palliative care, and I didn't know who could help me with this overwhelming fear that I didn't have long to live. Over the first year, I gradually came to understand what palliative meant. But the metastatic cancer diagnosis is a pivotal life experience. Nothing is the same after it. Any little twinge sends my mind instantly to the thought that the cancer is spreading. Intellectually, I know that there are many other reasons for me to feel a twinge, a sniffle, an ache, but my default thinking takes me directly to cancer. Should I buy something new for myself? Will I be around to use it? Should I plan a trip? It's very disorienting in that I often feel well, even healthy. The next thought that comes into my mind, though, is that I'm not healthy. I'm seriously not healthy. Relationships, communication, being heard by family and friends, all of that is fraught. At first, friends and acquaintances are sympathetic, really there to help. But for those who aren't that close, the sympathy starts to wane, and there's an unreal expectation that we'll get well, that the cancer, it's somehow that I'll get over the cancer. Just what part of incurable they don't understand, I don't really know, but family can also be really challenging. They don't want to hear that you're not going to be cured. We're not going to get well. Some of them just disappear. Some of them stay in that happy place of, you're strong, you'll beat this. And precious few, like my husband, have the emotional strength to stay by our sides. Mary O'Reilly writes in Radical Presence, teaching as a contemplative practice. Attention, deep listening. People are dying in spirit for lack of it. In academic culture, most listening is critical listening. We tend to pay attention only long enough to develop a counter-argument. We critique the student's or colleague's idea. We mentally grade and pigeonhole each other. In society at large, people often listen with an agenda to sell, to petition, to seduce. Seldom is there a deep, open-hearted, unjudging reception of the other. And so we all talk louder and more stridently and with terrible desperation. By contrast, if someone truly listens to me, my spirit begins to expand. This is the reason that metastatic support groups are so incredibly important. We greet new members by saying, "Welcome to the group that nobody wants to belong to, but everyone is glad is here." It's a safe place for us, a place where we know we are heard. We laugh together as we find the ridiculous in our stories, and we cry together as we experience letdown by those around us and in our treatments. We become very close, this group of strangers, with nothing really in common other than we are struggling with a terminal diagnosis. And we grieve together as we lose members. It's an incredibly important group to belong to, a very difficult group to belong to, but being heard outweighs the sorrow of loss. Tom Peters, a leadership researcher and writer, quotes Harvard Med School Dr. Jerome Groopman from his book, How Doctors Think. While Groopman acknowledges that doctors respect that patients are the number one source of evidence of patients' problems, he also points to research that has shown that, on average, doctors listen to patients for 18 seconds before interrupting. Tom Peters also found this applies to managers in a range of businesses as well. So I'll extrapolate from that quote that the most important thing for a patient in an interaction with their doctor or any of their medical oncology team is to be listened to. Once we feel heard, we can start to trust. We all want to trust that our doctors, all the people who oversee our care, have our best interest at heart. That extends to trusting that my healthcare team members are listening to each other. They are communicating with each other what they have heard from me, what they've noted from seeing me, my test results as they review my treatment plan. One of the perks, it seems, of having metastatic cancer is that when I moved to Kelowna just a couple years ago, I was assigned a new GP within a month. As I was getting to know him, I asked him about palliative care supports and facilities in Kelowna. He replied by saying that we don't need to be concerned with that just yet. He had listened to me, but he couldn't travel down that path with me. While I don't want to present that I know how to or always am emotionally strong enough to get through these difficult conversations gracefully, I'm far from that. But I don't have a choice other than to face my illness and impending death. And it would make the process so much easier if those in healthcare could guide me in knowing what I might expect. I respect and like this doctor very much. He keeps on top of my test results, has called me in to see me when there was a result he was uncertain about, and yet he still encourages me just to think positively, not to think about my end. Believe me, I don't want to focus on my end, but I do try to live the two roads. I'm hoping for the best by living each day being active, sleeping and eating well, following my new passion of contributing to the body of knowledge in cancer care. And I want to be prepared for the time when the worst does arrive, the decisions that will need to be made. I want to have had time to give them careful thought, and my GP is one of the people that I need to lean on to give me that information. The process of learning about and finally understanding what words like metastatic and palliative mean in a clinical sense and not in the common parlance of our society at large has impelled me to take on a research project. I have been fortunate to be put in contact with Dr. Barb Pasalt. She holds a principal research chair in palliative and end-of-life care at UBCO. And she was intrigued by the notion of living in the upstream phase of an illness requiring palliative care, a state which she called liminal. When she used that word, I knew I had found someone who understood. So last May, myself and a friend and colleague started a year-long study of 10 metastatic cancer patients. And we're looking to answer the question, what are the experiences of persons living with advanced cancer in an existential state? Through this research, I hope to give voice to what people with metastatic cancer think and feel. So many of us are now living longer and healthier, and we need to find ways to communicate about the end of life as we live with metastatic cancer. Living while dying is not really a new concept. After all, we're all going to die sometimes. It's just so in your face with a terminal diagnosis. My life passion on how we communicate has been a guiding and motivating force in how I've dealt with my diagnosis on a personal level, trying to figure out for myself how to live fully with death looming, especially in the days when I didn't know how close death might be, and it's been very lonely, even though I have a husband who's emotionally strong. As I started searching for answers, encountering so many people with terminal metastatic cancer diagnoses, and those like you working to make these illnesses more manageable, I have been struck again and again by how difficult the communication piece is. My hope is that the work like what is taking place here today, in many places in healthcare system, and research, including mine, will provide some understanding to those who do not and who cannot understand what it feels like to live with death looming, and to provide some insight, if not reassurance, to those newly diagnosed. So fortunately, I'm out of time completely, and so I can't get into my rant about the impact that technology has had on our communication skills. But we really do need to learn to communicate clearly, compassionately, and fully about living and dying, especially when we are, very thankfully, living with illnesses like metastatic cancer so much longer. Thank you for listening to my story, and thank you for all the work that you are doing.
I would like to now invite Professor Melba de Souza and Professor Florian Fair to deliver the keynote and call to action, the World Café Summit today.
Good, I get to hide behind here. You gotta love technology. First of all, welcome. Welcome, welcome. This has been like planning a wedding, yes? And it's happening today. It is. Before I jump into the title of our keynote address, I would like to say it has been an amazing journey working with Dr. Melba de Souza, who is the main lead of this entire project, but as well keeps saying that every one of you were the leaders. So I'm confused, but to me it's just a wonderful community event, and I am just thrilled. And I didn't sleep last night very much because I just couldn't wait for this morning to be with you. I'd like to also let you know that we have a wide variety of research assistants here that I'd love to have stand up and wave and say your names quickly so everyone knows all the background wedding planners here. So please.
Hi everyone, Prashant here. I have been working with Melbourne.
Hi everyone, Gopi here. Nice meeting you.
And Alice, as they were in the moment. Working with it to Melba.
I'm Harsh, I'm from UBC, I've also been working on this meeting.
Hello everybody, just looking forward to starting.
Melba's son, who was a wonderful support.
Hi, I'm Samuel.
Thank you.
Hello again, everybody, I'm Ashwin.
Isn't this awesome? And I'm Dr. Florian Fair. I've been working here for about 20 years. Graduated here from Caribou College in 1992. Westside Secondary person over there for high school, if anybody's from Kamloops. And
I'm Melba.
And you're Melba?
Yes.
And I'm a huge fan of this wonderful woman. We are working together because we have some common interests. And before we go into too much of the agenda. I know we only have 10 minutes, so I got to talk really fast because I was told 0.5 seconds per, whatever that meant. But we'd like to share with you this project. This project has been going on for quite a while, and you will notice in the back we have it being videotaped, and we have Rogers cable here. Okay, right. Thought I'd be careful. And we have Leon here as well, who's videotaping all of this. We have already put together a 3-part filmography based on some of the research work that we're doing. And I'm saying some because it's going to keep on going. You may have noticed this is the first annual event. It's a thing now. We put it up there, right? We're going to keep doing it. Yeah. And we hope to keep continuing this momentum on. And we have some other work to do as well after this. So you will see throughout the day, as you already have received your full agenda, that we will be gathering after lunch today and moving forward with some potential projects to keep this going. Because we have to take advantage of this rich, beautiful audience, yes, of participants. The main focus of the project that we worked on, which most of you know already about because some of you have been taking part of it as participants, stakeholders, we've all been invested interest in it, is really regarding breast cancer. As we know, it is the leading cause of cancer for women in British Columbia. 1 in 8 women, unfortunately, in the region will experience breast cancer in their lifetime. That's pretty scary, right? And as well, we also know that there's all kinds of elements. It's not just the diagnosis itself, it is the emotional aspect, the physical, the spiritual, the carry through with our caregivers. I myself, through a lens of a child, I experienced cancer, through my mom passing on with cancer. And so we know that it's big, and we know that it is bigger than just one person, but it also is one person going into a very lonely journey potentially. And it takes a family, it takes caregivers, support systems to really work and be and listen to that person who's going through cancer. And I heard the word communication twice with our first 2 speakers. The need for communication is huge, and that was the big piece of why we were doing this research. How can we look at these gaps? How can we work so that there is a smoother feeling, experience of dealing with cancer, living with cancer, and also carrying on so you have the highest quality of life? So we definitely wanted to look at the structured support systems and look at the experiences of the post-remission challenge, as well as looking at what does survivorship mean? And what do we need to do to make the quality of life better? And we looked at various elements, the financial aspects, the overall understanding of survivorship. Do you want me to click? You're good. And we also recognize there's some scary stats out there. We recognize that, yes, last year, 2023 stats came out, and people are passing on. So that is looming in the back of people's minds. Families, people being newly diagnosed. And there's a 5-year cancer survival rate in general. Now, this is very general about all cancers, but one of the things we did learn is lung cancer is still number 1, but we are seeing some interesting stats where people are living longer. And we're noticing there's a connection between supports, survivorship, communication. It prolongs life, and you have a higher quality of life. And it helps the family members, and it helps the caregivers. It's a huge domino effect, huge ripple effect. So we definitely want to look what we have for strengths in our society, in our communities, especially our rural communities. Look at access, look at what is there, and what can we do with what we have there, because we have well-meaning folks out there that are putting together amazing services, but not talking together all the time. How can we make that better? And we're listening to our patients, our clients that are diagnosed with cancer, and telling us. They are the voice that we need to listen to. We did find in the literature and this a model that absolutely still fits with today of what our patients are entering into when they're first diagnosed with cancer. And we've noticed that 55 to 75% of those clients need ongoing services, even after having interventions. And that's super important. They're requiring it. So we have a model that's from 2008 that we can still see being used today that hasn't changed. People are still saying we need supports. And definitely the biggest piece would be the psychosocial part, which is the main aim of our research, and pulling you all in together with that. And where it will go, who knows? Melba's got some ideas, so do I. And we know today we're going to hear a lot more. So we're really, really excited and thanking you. And I'm going to pass this on to Melba because she will sort of finish up our little presentation here too.
Thank you very much, Florian, and thank you everyone for being here today. And along this day, I think we are going to hear a lot about initiatives in cancer, advancements in cancer, and where the way ahead is with British Columbia and the cancer plan for the policies that Health Minister Adrian Dix has put together, and looking at different organizations. But for us at this local context, it is a time where we commemorate many of the works that the people who have had cancer have shared on. Like today, Hayley Coleman spoke about her love and passion of being and connecting with the people. Colleen Foran spoke about her love and passion being from her lived experience. And every one of you who have come here today, you have a stake today in cancer care in different ways. And this is what we are looking through our research that has been at Thompson River University, through our school, and working with different academicians, clinicians, partners, is to grow this transdisciplinary research and also to look at different aspects of how we can collaborate this partnership. So through the continuum in our research, we are looking at different ways and strategies and recommendations from cancer prevention with immigrants and refugees, and with marginalized population, 2S LGBTQIA+, and rural and remote areas, people who are aging, people from different races and walks in society, and how they go through with diagnosis. And some of them, Colleen mentioned today, what happens when you are informed that you have a cancer. And then going on to palliative and end of care, where we have a lot of work to do with when we look at psychosocial, spiritual, look at mental health, look at emotional health, look at different areas that affect a person after treatment, during treatment, on their ongoing recurrence, metastasis. And that's our research that is looking at this. Some of our studies have focused on different intersectionality factors that predicts if a person can do well and prognose well with their treatments, and what helps the support in community, in the healthcare, with their family, with social networking, with having community integrative networks, with having this financial networks, with having legal networks that helps you to progress in your life. And most of the emphasis that we can talk from our study comes about with having the access and the use of these healthcare resources for people who are marginalized and for other people's general populations, and different groups of people who are accessing to have better access and knowledge of this. Another one is having a tailored and very individualized approach to support them in survivorship, in recurrence, and getting supports from complementary, alternative, other therapies, looking at data leverage and how we can use the data that is connected here, looking at screening, early screening in survivorship time, and also looking at care plans and tailored care plans to an individual needs-based, be it cultural, being an indigenous person or non-indigenous person, and having that flexibility of what they need at that time with their cancer care, addressing equity and diversity in some of our groups here, and having different community engagement models. So one of the things is looking in our research is about looking at data analysis for risk prediction, looking at an environmental scan of what predicts them, and also having a personalized approach in their treatment. I'm just going to quickly go through. These are our top areas in research in cancer care, interdisciplinary collaboration with the people who work with that, and leveraging our data and technology that we are working with. And these are a few of our resources, and I would like to say thank you at this point for coming and being with us in this time.
Now I'd like to invite Professor Silviana Mima, Deputy Chief Medical Health Officer from the Community Health and Services Center of Kelowna, who's at the forefront of this movement.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Silvina Mema. I'm the Deputy Chief Medical Health Officer with Interior Health, and thank you for inviting me to talk today. And what a way to start the day today. Very emotional, and many lives are touched by cancer, and I just want to acknowledge that. It's an emotional journey. It's not just about the science. It's about the emotions that we feel when these topics are discussed. So first of all, our land acknowledgement, Interior Health covers a wide region, and it's the unceded territories of the Dakel Dene, the Tanaha, and Lakapmak, Shewepmik, Statlik, Silks, and Chilcotin nations. Next, please. So my focus of work is about prevention of disease and injury, and cancer being one of the chronic diseases that we work to prevent. So here in this chart is the top causes of death in BC. And as you can see, malignant cancers are at the top. I'm going to try and use the pointer here. So malignant cancers are at the top of the percentage of deaths, right? Like the percentage of why people die in the province. And it's also here, it's highest percentage of total deaths. Now, the yellow that you see here is the current toxic drug crisis, the public health emergency that was declared in 2006. So it follows close behind, but that doesn't change the top cause of death is malignant cancer. Next. So as it was mentioned before, Melba mentioned, there is the 10-year action plan for cancer in the province that was launched last year. And there is 4 strategies that are mentioned in that action plan. So the first one is to prevent cancer and find it earlier. The second is ensure timely access to treatment. The third one is optimize care through collaboration and partnerships. And the fourth is revitalize the cancer system through essential enablers. And the 10-year goals are to reduce the incidence of cancer, improve survival, and ensure a strong system delivering modern, evidence-based, and province-wide cancer care. Next. So the first strategy is the one that public health, my group of medical health officers and the population health team in Interior Health is concerned with. Next, please. So what do we talk about when we talk about cancer prevention and the population health approach? Next. The population health approach is an approach to disease prevention that uses 8 pillars. So there is 8 pillars in which the population health approach is based on. So the first one is to focus on the health of the population. As opposed to focusing on an individual person, we focus on the health of large groups of people. The second is addressing the determinants of health and their interactions. So we understand that disease happens for a reason. It's not just a chance or an accident, although sometimes some diseases cannot be prevented, unfortunately, and that includes some types of cancers. But there is a lot of underlying factors that can play a role in whether a person gets sick or not, or how they cope with the disease once they have it. So that has to do with the determinants of health. We base decisions on evidence. We are very diligent in terms of separating values and opinions from what is really the evidence saying. And we advocate for increasing upstream investment. So things like education or health promotion campaigns, early childhood development, in impacting the social determinants and the factors that have a role in resulting in disease. We also understand that one intervention alone is never the silver bullet. There is usually, most of the times, you need to apply a number of interventions. So we tackle issues as for multi-pronged approach, and we need to collaborate across sectors. Public health cannot exist as a silo. Public health, by definition, needs collaboration. It needs to be using picking the brain of everybody that is involved in certain particular issue. And cancer is a great example, because although we want to prevent cancer upstream, we also need to understand, the patient's voice, the physician's perspective, and the number of other things. We need to employ mechanisms for public involvement. It's very important to understand the user. The end goal is to change outcomes for the people, and we need to understand why people behave in certain ways, or why they believe in certain things that perhaps are putting them at risk down the road. And finally, demonstrate accountability for health outcomes. There is a need to look at data and to understand how the investment produced or did not produce results, and be humble really, and be ready to change our course if we cannot really demonstrate outcomes from our work. Next. So understanding population risk factors. So for individuals, individual risk factors include things like, in the person's age, their sex, their level of education, their behavioral, how they behave, what they do, what they eat, do they exercise, do they use tobacco, and then intermediate risk factors, so things that are a precursor to the disease, like, for example, blood lipids or diabetes or high blood pressure, overweight. So those are individual factors. At the population level, those factors translate into social and economic conditions. Is a community, what are the opportunities in that community for employment? What is the family composition? What is the environment in that particular community? What's the climate? Is there air pollution? Is there a healthy environment where people can exercise, can walk to work, or is it car dependent? What's the culture? What's the values, the norms? Is it cool to smoke? Is it cool to do something that is unhealthy or can put people at risk? And why is that? And then the community as a whole. What is the neighborhood look like? What is the neighborhood like? Do people feel safe in that neighborhood? Can they access the products and the things that they need to thrive? Next. So here is an interesting concept that is population attributable risk. And those of you familiar with epidemiology are probably familiar with this term. What population attributable risk does is it pinpoints what is the percentage or the proportion of certain disease, in this case cancer, that can be attributed to certain risk factor. For example, we know that we cannot prevent all cancers. Even if we had the best possible healthcare system with the best possible prevention systems, we are going to have individuals that have cancer, and that is because of their genetics and because their sort of predisposition, their biology, and that cannot be changed in some instances. Now, we know that if on top of that we add certain risk factors, like for example tobacco smoking, we are going to increase the proportion or the number of people that have lung cancer. So what population attributable risk does is it tells us what was the background level of disease that we were going to get, and then on top of that, what is the added number or proportion of cancers that we are getting because of that particular risk factor. So here we have a population attributable risk for in BC. We took this from a national study that gives the population attributable risk for different risk factors, and we applied it to the BC numbers to see how many cancers are there attributable to specific risk factors. So as you can see here on top, tobacco smoking is at the top. So the number of new cancer diagnoses that could be prevented if nobody smoked, if there was zero tobacco, was 4,000 cases. And that is for 2015, right? Like we applied these to the cases in 2015. And the next one is low physical activity, 1,300 cases of cancer, low fruit intake, 900 cancer cases, and then it keeps going. Excess weight, HPV infection, UV exposure, sedentary behavior, alcohol, other infections, and you can read the next. You can see the rest ones. Keep going. So what this tells us is that 4 in 10 cases of cancers are caused by modifiable risk factors. So this is an important number. It's almost half of the cancers are, they have a cause that could be, at least in theory, be modified. So there is a very nice document that came up recently. In fact, it's not yet posted online, and it's by the BC Cancer. And it talks about the 8 top exposures that cancer can be attributed to. And it talks about the different levels at which we can intervene to prevent those. So things like at the individual level, what you can do for smoking, you can give people a nicotine patch, nicotine replacement therapies. At the interpersonal level, what are those peer norms, the peer pressure, or at the organizational level, what are the policies of the organizations, the universities, the health authorities that allow to move forward with an agenda that prevents exposure to risk factors? At the community level, things like what are the norms at the community level in terms of, for example, smoking or any other physical activity. Are there, places where people can go and find recreation, things like that. And then lastly, the public policy level, which is really the legislative framework that we have. And for tobacco is very clear that, smoking has, how in the past 20 years that has progressed towards denormalizing and allowing for smoking to become less and less prevalent. Next. Keep going. So we talked about the population approach, and this is about the clinical approaches to cancer prevention. So in BC, we have something called the Lifetime Prevention Schedule. And what the Lifetime Prevention Schedule is a guide that guides clinical practice and with interventions that are cost effective. So if it's in the Lifetime Prevention Schedule, it means that it needs to be applied by clinicians because it is known to reduce costs in the health system. So things in the Lifetime Prevention Schedule include screening for certain cancers, behavioral counseling for smoking cessation, interventions to reduce alcohol use, obesity management. Lifetime Prevention Schedule also includes immunizations that prevent cancer like HPV, and screening for risk factors like obesity. Obesity is a risk factor for cancer, and that is in the Lifetime Prevention Schedule. Next. Keep going. I'm going to go quickly through these. These graphs are based on data that comes from population health surveys. So in 2021, there were population health surveys that ask people, what do you smoke, what do you eat, etc. So I just want to draw to your attention to the bottom here, and this is the BC average. For example, percentage of people that smoked or vaped daily or occasionally in BC was 13. In the interior region was generally higher. Here is IH, 14%. And here is the different areas of IH, Thompson Caribou, where we are now having the highest. And here is the same, so provincial average for binge drinking alcohol. And as you can see, interior health is also generally higher than the provincial average. Next. This one is about fruits and vegetable consumption, which we know is a factor that prevents cancer. And here we have BC 22.3 is the average, and generally higher or this one we are better for fruit and vegetable consumption in the interior. Kootenay boundary being the one with the highest fruit and veggie consumption. And here is physical activity. And what percentage of the population engage in moderately or vigorously physical activity. Here is BC, and in the interior region, a little bit higher, which is good. Next. And I'm just going to show you one slide on cancer screening. There is a lot to talk about cancer screening, but I'm just going to show you breast cancer screening. This is breast cancer screening in BC. It's the gray lines, and the blue ones is IH. And this is only up until 2020. So we don't have, I couldn't get a lot of very updated data. And generally, you see interior health is slightly below the provincial average, but the target is 70% participation. And we are here hovering around 45%, 44%. So there is a lot of work to do in terms of cancer screening in BC and in particularly in the interior region. And this is about HPV vaccination. So HPV vaccination for girls and for boys. And this is the pandemic year. And you can see how it dropped. During the pandemic year, HPV vaccination significantly declined. And it's one of the priorities in the ministers, the provincial strategy. And lastly, the last factor I'm really passionate about is radon. And radon is a radioactive gas, and it's quite prevalent in the interior region. And so this map shows this is the interior region. The red areas are areas where over 30% of homes have unhealthy levels of radon. And in this graph, you can see by communities. So for example, in Castlegar, up to 50% of homes have levels of radon that exceed the Canadian guideline, which is 200 becquerel per cubic meter. So radon is, in my opinion, one of those neglected risk factors that people don't talk about, don't know about, and it's because it's not a provincial issue. It's certainly more of an issue in the interior region, and particularly in the Kootenays, although everywhere in IH. It's not, and I'm taking it personally to create awareness and to talk to different organizations across the province to increase awareness about radon. And we are doing a pilot at schools where we have tested most of the schools for radon. Next. And this is the last slide I have, projection of new cancer diagnosis and in BC. And I don't have to, you can see the trend here of the orange lines increasing. We are going to see more cases of cancer in BC. We are also seeing an increase in the population. So we really need to focus on prevention as much as we can, so that we can really target with treatment and interventions those cancers that we couldn't prevent. Next. So this is the medical health officer team. This is our chief medical health officer, Dr. Martin Lavoie, and the rest of the medical health officers. We have geographic assignments, and we are always happy to connect with partners and talk. And we have 3 new medical health officers that have been added to the team in the past week, and we have one of them here, Andy, who is a new medical health officer that joined the team recently. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. I don't know if there is any questions. Yes.
I'm just a little bit surprised about the radon. I mean, I didn't hear about it in the 60s and 70s in the United States. What is it coming from? Can you just talk about that? Why is it in the houses, and why don't we know more about it?
Yeah, so radon is a naturally occurring gas. It doesn't smell like anything. It doesn't have any color. You don't know it's there, and it's just the decay of uranium, which is in the rock, and it's natural. It's not. There is nothing really we can do to prevent it from occurring. We have a health inspector in interior health that is very passionate, and he would say what's unnatural is the way we build in the rock, right? Like we build our homes in the rock and we seal the home, right, to make it efficient for heat and air conditioning and whatnot, and then the radon enters the house and concentrates inside, right? Like it cannot escape because the house is now sealed. So when we lived in our ancestors that lived in open, in more open environments that were not like as energy efficient like as that, the radon would escape, right? But in the ways that we are building homes, radon tends to accumulate in the homes, and there is tons of evidence that if you're exposed for a certain, period, depending on the dose, you can develop lung cancer. In fact, it's the second cause of lung cancer in Canada after tobacco smoke. And if people smoke and are exposed to radon, there is a synergy, and it exponentially increases the chances of people getting lung cancer.
Wow, thank you. Well, we quickly get up, Mr. Shetty, there was a question. What is the current rate in Kamloops of radon?
Oh, I would have to go.
25%? Okay.
25, okay. Thank you. And we have a great partner with School District F73 from Kamloops doing testing. There was one more question over there.
I'm sorry, I missed part of the presentation. Did you say, do you have a relationship with the Home Builders Association?
Well, the Home Builder Association, like that would be a policy intervention for radon, which is the biggest. And I don't personally talk to them, but I know that my team, the health inspectors, there is conversations with them, and the building code was changed, not
new builds.
For new builds. Exactly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing how public health plays a key role in this narrative. I'd like to now invite Mr. Gunashila Shetty, a registered nurse from Ireland, to share insights into survivorship that must extend beyond the clinical setting, encompassing considerations for social determinants of health. He is an online speaker.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gunashila Shetty, and thanks for being part of this World Summit. And just to give you my background, as it was introduced, I'm working in Ireland for nearly 20 years. And I'm just going to share my experience, my journey of survivorship with you all. So, my survival journey, it just started 2 decades ago. I chose Ireland as a new home nearly 2 decades ago. Nearly 20 years I'm living in this country. I should say I will more or less acculturated with the Irish culture and Irish integration, but as it is much prevalent in most of the first generational immigrants, always be much attached with my home country, India, and usually is to travel frequently to India to meet with my family, friends, and the same thing I was doing in 2018 on my holiday. But this holiday turned into a nightmare. I never ever expected that one day I'll be called as a cancer patient, but without, a relatively healthy lifestyle I had, and I was much like having a good time in India, but it just on one fine morning with the slightest, as I was telling earlier, that Ireland, I have chosen Ireland as my new home for the 2 decades, but still much associated with my hometown, is in my home country, India, though I culturally integrated with the Irish culture, but still much associated with the Indian origin. But in 2018, my holiday turned to be a nightmare, where I was diagnosed with the cancer. I came back to Ireland for continuing my treatment, and then I should say my new normal or the new beginning is started. Because when I say the new normal or new beginning, I think having a diagnosis of the cancer, even though I work in health sector, I think it will have a more impact for any persons, whichever the advancement of the treatment we are having. But I think still we are much much associated with that the term big C. It gives a fear to everyone. So I'm not the exception for that. And that was a big shock. And I think it is not that I never thought why me, rather I questioned why now. So that was the first thing. And the next one I was thinking, how long? So these are the two basic things which came up to my mind when my initial diagnosis. But luckily, all the treatment, then it's continued here. Then the new normal, when I say, I think you will have a lot of, with a part of your treatment, you will be having a physical, mental, psychological, financial, all these issues will come. But you have to sail through that. And then when you started to move forward, you have to accept if you were not able to live like how we used to live pre-cancer stage or pre-diagnosis, but then you have to accept it as your new beginning and you have to move on with your next life of the cancer survivorship. Can you go with? Yeah, just to give you a perspective of the Irish cancer survivorship data, I think it's the latest NCRI report. It says around 4.2% of the Irish population are cancer survivors. It's obviously, as you all agree with me, the advancement of the treatment, the better surveillance, all this has given the higher rate of the survivorship. But still, as it was rightly said before, the cancer still is a major cause for the death, one of the major cause for the death. So, as a national cancer strategy of ours is defined, survivorship begins with the diagnosis and continues until the end of the life. But for me, when I termed with cancer survivorship, though it was difficult to accept as a cancer patient, but I say you have some sort of the safety net when you are under the care of the treating team. But the day when you have to move away from that, when you are almost in the verge of discharging from the regular treatment, and you say you are becoming cancer survivor, though the definition says it is right from the day of the beginning diagnosis of the cancer, you are called a cancer survivor. But in the reality, I feel once you're almost finishing your treatment cycle, then you are going away as you are going to be discharged. You will be much higher stress. Because you will be losing out your safety net, and you are almost like you are going to be living your own, and there is so much anxiety associated with that. I think that is one of the biggest challenge what we have being a cancer survivor. So for that aspect, I think what we needed is a holistic recovery of the survivorship care, which needs to be focused on for any person who is suffering with a cancer. Can we go with the next slide, please? You go next slide, please, Mama. Like when I talk cancer survivorship support, what we got in because there are a lot of survival programs and survival support is going on, but what I focus is only on what are the aspects I have inculcated, what aspect I have used while in my journey of the cancer survivorship. The one of that is the aspect, if I take, that's the financial or going back to work, because that is for anyone. I know the money is not the everything, but you need the money to survival, to have a decent life. So that is one of the very essential. And when you have a disease like cancer, and you'll have a lot of trouble and going back to the work, and you may be psychologically you are much affected, you're physically you are affected. So going back to the work is maybe really challenged. So that is the one thing which everyone may have to be much focus needs to be, maybe has to be provided. But for me, when I'm on this journey, I think there was a very good support I received from my employer or from my healthcare setting. especially like when I was planning to go back, there was always, I had a regular contact from my employer, and there was a plan in place how to go back, because certainly I was not in a position to go back to the duty what I was doing previously or the way I was working previously. There was always a need for the restructuring of my work. So there was all negotiation was with my management, and they were much proactive in that. And then we have to work around with that, what skill set I have, and we have to reassess that, or maybe some of the skills that I have to reskill myself to suit the job which I'm going to do as I come back. So maybe I started initially with maybe just with the half time, then slowly I started building up. So I think this is one of the very crucial bond where every survivor needs to be provided with enough information, because you have plenty of the things are going on with you. You may not have any clue how to go back to work, how to start your work. Are you able to do your new role, your role what you were doing previously, or what changes you need to do, and how that can be facilitated? So for that, you need to have a constant contact with your employer, and employer support is very essential in this aspect. I think I'm lucky enough to have a very good system in place, and there's a great support has been provided, and I think every cancer survivor need to have that support, and healthcare system or the government policies need to be directed towards on that aspect. Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah, but having said that, everything cannot be spoon-fed. The patients, every patient, though you are on whichever the stage of your journey, once you are almost ready to come back, every patient needs to play an important role in their own recovery, both mentally and physically. It is challenging. It is not as easy what we say. It is definitely challenging, but the one has to take a guard, one has to take a call, how to go about, how to take a individual or the personal responsibilities. The meantime, health services or the health sector has to support system need to be in place to support the survivors, support the cancer patients, and empower them with the different requirement what they need, what the changes they need needs to be provided. Or cancer survivors for living with and beyond the cancer should be seen as a continuum of the cancer care. It cannot be one stop, or it cannot be one shop go. It has to be continual. It has to be taken under the holistic approach. Because one cannot be just looking to their one physical health, mental. It has to be all the areas: physical, mental, spiritual, and intellectual. All aspects when it is covered, and so then it might be much better approach with the support from the service provider. Can you go to the next slide, please? And as for the psychological aspect, it was definitely one of the toughest challenge I ever faced during this, because, though I was under the best multidisciplinary team for my treatment, there was no problem with that, but still, when you're living maybe thousands of kilometers away from, thousands of miles away from your home country, and away from your family, away from your good safety network, and when you are just living with a different country and with the fear of cancer, and maybe to the extent, it is not exaggeration to say, fear of dying in other unknown country, that was one of the biggest fear one will have, and definitely psychologically, that was much challenging. So at that stage, I think there was a good support system which was provided to the oncopsychology department. And just to give an idea how it works here in Ireland, it was like previously they used to have, there was a different cancer support systems they used to work, and they used to provide the psychological support. But from the recent national strategy of 2017 to 2027, that is our national cancer strategy, they emphasized on the collaboration of all these support centers together. So they formed as a this was the alliance, that is the collaboration of all the cancer support centers together. So through that, the cancer, whoever is a cancer survivor, if you have any difficulties in the psychosocial aspect, they can go any time, they can refer themselves, or they can refer from the hospital, or they can self-refer themselves to these centers, and these centers are brilliant in providing confidential psychosocial support. And as well from the workplace, there is employee assistant program. Sometimes when you are working, and I'm a pediatric as well as a mental health nurse, when we mental health nurses, sometimes we take it granted, oh, we know everything, that is just a talk therapy, it may not be much useful, that's what we do every day and day-to-day life, so that's of no good. But maybe I was in the same mindset. But in fact, I have to tell you this thing is my wife has just referred me to the employee assistant program. One fine morning, I get a call from the employee assistant program psychologist, and he says, Gunshil, this is me, and are you interested to speak to me? Then I said, okay, yeah, go on. Then when I went to him, when I opened up myself to him, I think that was a great help ever I got. That was a ultimate help, I think, which I myself never would have got it once I got referred to that. And that was a great support which I got in that stage. So that is another brilliant program what we are having. That was definitely much support which was given to that. And also recently in the last year, the 2022 National Cancer Control Program and Survivorship Program, they said there is a psycho-oncology department needs to be in each area as well as in the community. And also they recommended for the nursing specialists, that is the psycho-oncology, cancer nursing specialists in each team. I think that is much helpful for the survivors. Let me go for the next. And this is another model which we are actually looking in Ireland is recent. This is again as a part of the new strategy, that is the National Cancer Strategy. They have come up with the ALICE. This is a new cancer survivorship care model which we are practicing currently. It is started rolling out. The broad principles they're taken into like assess, link in, link out, onward, inform, empower, support, and services. Because as you know, there are different types of the cancer survivorship programs existing, which may be physician-led, nurse-led, community-led, and there's different places. But by studying all that, I think our health system has come out with this is one of the service providing for the model of the cancer survivorship care, which were given this based on this risk stratification of the patient will be done, and the survivorship pathway, with each pathway, all these principles will be applied and assess the patient, and then the continuous support will be provided to the patients. I think this is one, and also like the cancer survivors passport, I think that is one of the brilliant idea what they're having, which was usual previously. I remember when I'm doing one as my project, I did it for one of the ID patients. So now same thing has been implemented even the cancer patients. So those passports will give every detail about the patients and his appointments, what is he, where he is going next, and what are the resources available, where he is referred, and when his appointment is coming. Everything, holistically, everything is present to him. He will have access to every data what he is going through in the further future in his care. That is one of the good things what we are having at the moment as it is rolled on. So that's the current model what we are looking at the Irish healthcare system. Can we go next slide, please? Apart from that, there are other national cancer control program survivorship programs. Survivorship programs are run like one is thriving and surviving. I think everybody will be definitely familiar with this. Is the Stanford University adopted program, which runs for the 6 weeks. It is for the 2.5 hours. And this is again self-patient, self-paced management, evidence-based self-management for the survivorship program. And also another is the RACES. It's the Life and the Cancer Enhancing Survivorship Workshop. And similar, there are many others. I'm just touching only which I am exposed during my survivorship journey. There are many other programs are available, but these are some of the programs which currently runs here. Next slide, please. And this is the one which I'm very closely associated. This is one that recently launched. It's a new initiative from our health service executive or the health sector from Ireland. For the health sector workers, that is the HSE workers, they introduced this program for survivors by survivors. So this is a new development which is provided by the Irish health workers, who are the employees of the HSEs who are diagnosed with the cancers, providing the survival peer support to the people who are diagnosed with this cancer in this service. And this is basically just a befriending or the listening service. We are not providing any clinical guidance or the clinical supporting. It's kind of a navigating service and empowering the patients in their stage of any stage of the trajectory of their cancer survivorship. What are the resources available? What are the resources available in the within the service, or if it is outside the services, or any stage, if they wanted to have a psychological support or the emotional support, moreover, the empathetical approach, what we use in this one. This is a new initiative which is started, and the part of it is purely runs as a voluntary program, and it's much of peer support to the co-workers which is provided. It's just launched a couple of weeks back, and we are in the very initial stage of the evaluation of this program. Can we put the next one? That's the end of thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shetty. Truly, survivorship plays a crucial role shaping the landscape of cancer care, advocating for research, fostering a culture of support. Knowledge translation lies at the core of our endeavors, bridging the gap between theory and practice. Now I'd like to invite Andrea Knox to share research findings into tangible benefits for patients and communities.
Perfect, thank you. So glad to be here today, everyone. Sorry, I'm just organizing my screen because there's too many things open when you present in Zoom. Hi, my name is Andrea Knox, and I'm the Director for Nursing and Allied Health Research and Knowledge Translation here at BC Cancer, and it's my distinct pleasure to be with you all today to share the story of our novel department and some of the exciting work that we're doing. But before I begin, I do just want to take a moment and acknowledge with respect that I am speaking to you today from the unceded ancestral and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations of the Coast Salish peoples. But I do actually live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Syilx Okanagan peoples, which is what is colonially known as Kelowna, BC. So today I'm going to provide you with just a quick overview of our department and some of the work that we've started over the last 3 years, and highlight our ongoing efforts to advance innovation and excellence in interprofessional research and knowledge mobilization by creating a center of excellence for nursing and allied health research. And so our department consists of nurses and allied health providers who are uniquely positioned within our organization. And these roles seamlessly bridge operations, clinical practice, and research, and get to apply their research and analytical skills directly within our health system to advance pressing priorities with evidence. Apologies. So to set us off on the right path, we actually collaborated right out of the gate with individuals and teams across BC Cancer and the BC research landscape to help pinpoint 6 strategic priority areas of focus for the first 5 years of our department. And these priorities include focusing on strengthening and leading research in nursing and allied health at BC Cancer, working to enhance knowledge mobilization to maximize the impact of that research in practice, policy, and healthcare decision-making, establishing an integrated academic training pipeline to cultivate the future generation of research talent, developing the necessary infrastructure and resources for nurses and allied health providers to lead and engage in research and knowledge mobilization, working to foster internal and external partnerships to encourage collaboration across that historical divide that we've seen between academia, practice, and operations in healthcare. And finally, of course, we can't do any of this without money. So part of our work is formulating a funding strategy to support all the fantastic nursing and allied health research and knowledge mobilization projects that we hope to see. And so once our priorities were identified, work began to establish the infrastructure that we would need to facilitate research and integrate some novel roles for nurses and allied health providers to help us achieve these lofty goals. And so some select examples of our achievements in the first 3 years include establishing the first of its kind nutrition knowledge mobilization dietitian role, the first nurse practitioner clinician scientist role in BC, and just recently we launched our brand new clinical research specialist radiation therapist role. We've also established new skill development programs for staff, attracted a cadre of research trainees, and co-founded the Cancer Health Equity Collaborative, which I'll speak a little bit more about later. So with some of these foundational pieces falling into place, our focus then quickly shifted towards building out a strong program of nursing and allied health research in partnership with clinicians, health systems leaders, and policymakers, as well as patient and family partners. Currently, the focus of our research is to build health system resiliency by tackling systemic equity and workforce challenges. And right now, we are leading several projects which will serve as the foundation for a series of work in the future that aligns with the new BC 10-year Cancer Action Plan that was announced last year. And equity is definitely a trending topic right now that has emerged as a priority within cancer care. And this is because despite a publicly funded healthcare system, people with lived experience of health and social inequities face alarming disparities across the cancer continuum. And this includes being diagnosed with preventable cancers at rates that surpass the general population, dying of cancers that are often curable, being diagnosed in an advanced stage for screening detectable cancers, experiencing poor symptom management, and sometimes receiving insufficient palliative and/or end-of-life care. So as one of the first teams to step into the healthcare equity space in the context of cancer, we were presented with a unique opportunity to characterize the current state of how health equity is being taken up by the cancer system in Canada. So we started this work by hosting a series of engagement sessions with funding support from a Michael Smith Convening and Collaborating Grant, which we also refer to as our C2 project. And the focus of this project was really to explore the top priorities and concerns regarding cancer-related health equity, including how these issues are being or might be addressed at the individual and systems level. Through these sessions, we identified 5 priority areas to advance equity-oriented cancer care, and this work has actually laid the foundation for our robust program on equity research. So building on our learnings from the C2 project, we recently received funding from the Canadian Partnership Against Cancer to develop and implement a 2-phase evidence-based equity model of team-based care. This implementation research aims to strengthen BC Cancer's organizational capacity to deliver team-based care with a strong equity focus, especially for those who are currently underserved within the cancer sector. Another example is our Canadian Cancer Society funded equity grant, which is focusing on cultivating relationships to establish a research collaboration that focuses on redressing the modifiable cancer-related disparities in the poorest postal code in Canada, the downtown east side in Vancouver. These projects have catalyzed a lot of key relationships across academia and the health system, and now our research team is tackling other issues like how mental health and substance misuse, compounded by poverty and housing insecurity, creates multiple barriers for individuals seeking or referred to cancer care. Our foundational work to advance health and healthcare equity has already sparked practical ideas, research opportunities, and new partnerships. And this has actually led to the formation of the Cancer Health Equity Collaborative, or CHEC, that I referred to closer to the start of the presentation. And CHECK is actually a team of academic and health system partners who are leading the development of new strategies to improve equity within the cancer care sector. The work of this group aims to make equity a strategic priority through collaborating with frontline community organizations, patient and family partners, and the development of organizational structures to support equity-focused care. But equity-focused research is not all we do. We are also leading some exciting work to evaluate the staff and provider experiences in team-based care, implementing electronic patient-reported outcome measures in routine nursing-led breast cancer follow-up clinics, optimizing the role of nurses in advanced care planning, investigating the factors affecting the pursuit of specialty certification in oncology nursing, and conducting a trial on intermittent fasting in cancer patients. This research is spearheaded by clinicians for clinicians, with a tremendous level of interest and engagement from all levels of the organization, right from direct care up through senior executive leadership. And alongside the department-led research, we also support research career development through our experiential training pathway. Our training pathway provides master's and PhD candidates, postdoctoral researchers, and early career scholars with a platform to cultivate their embedded research projects and programs. So in effect, positioning them to make change with their research right within the healthcare system. The research conducted by our current fellows closely aligns with health system priorities, and they're focusing on areas such as equitable access to cancer treatment, the transformative use of digital tools in the nursing workforce, and the examination of the unique needs of Punjabi Sikh patients throughout the cancer treatment journey, among many other important topics. And so as you can see, we've been able to build out a strong research portfolio in our short 3 years. But to truly drive innovations at the point of care and shift our culture towards becoming a true learning health system, we need to provide our staff with the opportunity, training, and resources to participate in research and knowledge translation. And to accomplish this, our department has several hallmark programs designed specifically for our direct care clinicians. And the first one I'd like to highlight is our BC Cancer Practice-Based Research Challenge. And the Research Challenge is our annual program that offers employees with limited or no research experience the opportunity to learn basic research skills and work with a mentor on a project of their choosing. To date, the Research Challenge has provided training on the different stages of the research process to 14 teams comprised of over 100 BC Cancer staff. And many teams have gone on to share their findings at conferences, special seminar series, and publications. And the ones you see on the screen here are just a few examples of some of the teams that have gone through our program. But as impactful as research is, moving research evidence into practice is just as critical. Our Knowledge Translation Challenge program was developed in partnership with Vancouver Coastal and Providence Health to do just that, help clinicians learn how to translate and implement research findings at the point of care. To date, the KT Challenge has provided training and support to close to 40 BC Cancer staff, and 2 of the projects are shared here. They're actually from our very first cohort in 2019, and both of which are on track to complete in June of this year. So we're very excited to hear about the results of these 2 projects. Our next staff-facing program is our Research and KT Learning Collaborative, which is a bi-monthly forum where clinicians across the nursing and allied health disciplines can come together for shared learning and knowledge mobilization. And we actually open this up to anyone from any healthcare organization or institution that's interested. You're more than welcome to join these sessions. Since its inception, the Learning Collaborative has hosted over 14 sessions on a variety of research and KT-related topics, including research results, resources to support research and KT initiatives, foundational skills training, and more. And to date, over 300 staff have engaged actively in our live sessions, each of which are recorded and made available on our website for on-demand viewing. And the most recent addition to our Hallmark program catalog is our brand new Planetary Health Nursing Internship program, which has been developed to address climate-related challenges within the clinical environment, while also providing an opportunity for nurses who are interested to learn more about quality improvement and knowledge translation methodologies. In our current climate crisis, we know that the health of our planet impacts human health, and most importantly in our context, has implications on cancer incidence and outcomes. As the healthcare industry is a major contributor to greenhouse gases, We all have a responsibility to evaluate our own contributions to this crisis and take action to ensure innovative and sustainable solutions are in place to tackle these problems. So supporting nursing and allied health research and knowledge translation within a healthcare organization also requires setting up distinct structures and processes that have not been provided in the construct of historical research practices for nursing and allied health clinicians. So to accomplish this, we have set up new awards programs to fund nursing and allied health research studies. We've established new relationships with university programs and faculty to facilitate graduate training for staff. We've created novel fellowships and new job descriptions that actually allow nursing and allied health clinicians to hold research funding or even seek out paid research opportunities. All of these things were not necessarily available to our clinicians prior to the creation of our department. And lastly, and most importantly, as a team, we feel quite strongly that you can't build a center of excellence in nursing and allied health research and knowledge translation without including the voice of those for whom we are seeking to improve the system. Engaging patient and family and community partners as key collaborators in each of our research projects and the development and ongoing evaluation of our hallmark programs helps guide us to ensure all the work that we do is oriented towards meeting the needs of our patients and their chosen families. So over the last 3 years, we've been able to create something we think is truly special, and we regularly hear from staff just how grateful they are for the direct support our team provides on a daily basis. And organizations from across Canada have even begun reaching out to ask how we do what we do and how they can replicate it. And so with that, I'd actually like to conclude with an invitation to all of you. I've basically given you a very summary overview of what our department has done in 3 years in the last 15 minutes, and there's so much more that I could possibly share. But I will say we're committed to expanding our research and knowledge translation partnerships, and we welcome any opportunity to learn and work together in order to shape and produce innovative and impactful health systems research. So please feel free to reach out to me directly by email or check out our webpage using the QR code here to explore our programs, our projects, and our resources in more detail. And I believe we might have a few minutes for questions if I was able to keep myself on track. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, for guiding our shared values of compassion, integrity, and excellence. I'd like to now invite Professor Ian Vance Mitchell, Associate Professor of Emergency Medicine from UBC, to share insights into ketamine and psilocybin, traditionally associated with altering states of consciousness, which are now being reevaluated for their impact on mental health and well-being.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It feels kind of weird to talk here. I've been coming to the university, well, I used to come here as a high school student to go to the library here when it was Caribou College. And it's, I look around, everything's changed so much. My name is Ian Mitchell. I'm one of the emergency physicians in town. That's my main job. But kind of years ago when I was on my way to medical school, I was trying to get into physiology as a prelude to medical school, and my grades weren't good enough. And I ended up looking around for something else to do, and this was the day when you just kind of walked around. There was no application process. And the guys at physiology said, well, why don't you talk to these guys in pharmacology? And I'm like, well, what's that? I didn't even know what the word meant. And he said, well, that's where you study the effects of drugs on people. And I'm like, you can do that? And that was kind of my life from there on in. So I've always been very fascinated with drugs, and particularly a lot of the recreational drugs. And so when Florian asked me to come and speak here, I was like, well, I'm not an oncologist. I don't have any kind of cancer expertise, but I do know a lot about drugs. And so these are a couple of drugs that are kind of up and coming in cancer care, and I hope I can just share some information for you. Okay, next slide, please. So a little bit more about me. I'm an emergency physician, as I said, currently at Royal Inland, but I spent a lot of time at St. Paul's serving the downtown east side community, and a couple of years in Abu Dhabi. And knowing a lot about drugs, that was kind of handy when cannabis became legalized, and kind of went through the medical program, and I participated in some research in that. And along with Michael Cohen, we have a clinic in town here that we help people with issues and around medical cannabis. I was also the physician lead for the first emergency department take-home naloxone project in Canada, where someone who'd come in with an overdose could leave with a naloxone kit. And now we kind of think that's pretty standard now, and there's kits everywhere, but this was actually the first place in Canada to do this. And I've had about 28 years of clinical practice with ketamine, so ketamine for sure I can tell you lots about. Next slide, please. As far as conflicts of interest, I'm on the board of directors of CATA Canada, and this is a non-profit agency that's devoted to moving ketamine out of the hospital into more of the community setting and making it more accessible to people. And I'm also a consultant educator, or have been a consultant educator with ATMA Canada, which is a company in Alberta that does psychedelic training and research. I'm no longer affiliated with them at the moment. Next slide, please. So we're going to start with ketamine. And ketamine is the favorite drug of emergency physicians. Despite being a potential drug of abuse, it has stayed in the medical system predominantly because of the military. Because it's an essential drug for the military to use. It's an excellent anesthetic in low resource environments. So if you're in the third world anywhere, you need to cut off someone's leg, you can give that to them. It doesn't decrease their respiration, doesn't decrease their blood pressure, and surgeries can be carried out. So it's an essential medication from the WHO. But it's great for us because it is super safe. It is the choice of sedation for little kids to the biggest people there are. We use it to intubate trauma patients because it doesn't decrease the blood pressure. We use it for procedural sedation across the board if I'm going to fix a fracture, do a prolonged stitching session. It decreases seizure. It helps asthma. Has so many uses. It's a great medication, but I really want to talk to it more about in cancer use. Just a little bit about the basics of ketamine. Ketamine is, as I said, a general anesthetic, but at lower doses, it's very good for helping relieve pain. It works on the NMDA system, which is kind of similar to the dopamine system, the epinephrine system. Every system has a kind of a chemical that activates it, and it's for ketamine, it's the NMDA receptors. One of the limiting factors is it has a kind of short half-life, only lasts for about an hour. So, even if you give it by mouth, it's only going to last an hour or two. So, it's difficult to give ongoing. It's much better if you can give it IV or subcutaneous. Oral dosing is possible, but it tastes bad, and it leads to kind of more ataxia. People feel a bit more offset with it. One of the things that people may be familiar with is a medication called S-ketamine, and that's a kind of one isomer of ketamine that's been isolated and marketed for depression. So right now you can go to a psychiatrist's office and get S-ketamine nasally for depression. There's only certain psychiatrists that have been approved to do that by the company. When we talk about ketamine in cancer, it's useful for pain management. So it can be given orally or intranasally, but really ideally you're giving a longer subcutaneous infusion or an intravenous infusion. It's useful as an antidepressant, and that can be more intermittent use. So that can be a use that's every couple of days, once a week. It can be very effective as an antidepressant in a way that traditional antidepressants are not. Traditional antidepressants, all the SSRIs, the tricyclic antidepressants, they take about 3 to 4 weeks to become effective from the time you start them. Whereas ketamine is within hours. And the only other thing that does that is electroconvulsive therapy. And that obviously comes with its own issues. And interestingly, just yesterday, there's a big physician's resource called Up to Date, and it kind of contains all the medical information. It's usually what I go to when I'm looking for, I don't know what to do in this case, and that happens often enough in Emerge. And they just changed their guidelines yesterday to say that ketamine was a better choice than electroconvulsive therapy, which is a kind of a major shift in psychiatry. One of the things that can happen with opiates, if you take them for a long time, not even that long, even after about a week, people become tolerant, but they also develop hyperanalgesia. So they will perceive pain as being more intense because of the effect of the opiates. And this effect is mediated by NMDA receptors, and it can be blocked by ketamine. So with ketamine, you can reset that hyperalgesia, and you can provide some pain relief on its own, and you can decrease the amount of opiates that need to be given. And those are all kind of good things in cancer care. Certainly in the emergency department, I see many people with issues with opiates. Too much sedation, too much constipation, respiratory depression, all big issues. So by introducing ketamine, often we can decrease the amount of opiates that are being used. And this is just kind of one example of a trial. This is a relatively recent trial that happened in Toronto. I just like to showcase Canadian research when possible. And this kind of adds to our knowledge of the subject. This is actually the first psilocybin trial performed in Canada. And it was 20 people. It's the INCT-PC trial, so intranasal ketamine for depression in people with cancer in palliative care. Okay? So all these patients are palliative care due to cancer, and they all have depression. And they were given ketamine up to 3 doses over 1 week intranasally. And that's usually a dose of about 50 to 75 milligrams. And they were allowed to redose if their symptoms recurred. And yeah, next slide, please. And this is just kind of an example. What we see here is really within days, 1-2 days, all of a sudden, depression is much better. Okay? And that's just not something that we see with traditional antidepressants. Next slide, please. So the issues are that this is an incredibly difficult medication to access. I can use it in the emergency department, but if I've got someone who's doing great on a low dose of ketamine, 0 side effects, I can't send them up the floor because they won't run it on the floor. So then that just goes away for them, and that's unfortunate. Intranasal is great, but you kind of limit in how much you can give, and if you're using it for pain, you've got to kind of keep redosing, and that's not really ideal. Oral dosing, as I mentioned before, kind of increases some of the ataxia. And ultimately, it is a psychedelic, and not everybody's cool with that. That's something you have to kind of talk to people about, and for me, it's a different matter. It's like, well, you're going to sleep now, boom, away you go. But this is a different matter where you keep people awake, and like, okay, if they start to get into that psychedelic range and start seeing walls melting and that sort of stuff, that can be kind of distressing for people. Kids love it. Yeah, it's like Barney coming out of the wall. Yeah, this is great. All right. So that's pretty much ketamine. So I'd love to see it more used in ketamine. There's some good research and review articles on it, and I hope kind of this has been a little bit informational about ketamine. Next slide, please. So next we're going to move on to psilocybin. The psilocybin is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, so we're talking about essentially a psychedelic. But it's really coming up on its own now as a medication for depression. Okay, and again, it's, next slide, please. Again, this is something that acts very quickly, much quicker than traditional antidepressants, and has a prolonged duration of action to 6 months for these treatments. So we really started, end-of-life anxiety in cancer is kind of a wedge that's been used for psilocybin. We want to study this drug. And for cannabis, it was kids with seizures. There's kids with seizures that, you can only get them better with CBD. And that's a terrible thing to have. It gets a seizure. So it's hard for an agency to stand up and say, well, we're not going to approve this trial to treat kids with seizures. So we've got no other option. And then, so now with psilocybin, we've got, okay, well, now it's okay to experiment on people at the end of life. But you can't have it pretty much for anything else. But at end of life, they're kind of reasonable, a little bit more reasonable about it. So there were initially a couple of pilot studies in 2011, just small numbers. In 2016, there were 2 randomized controlled trials at Johns Hopkins and NYU. So very major academic centers are coming into this now. And this is for relief of existential distress, about dying, coming to terms with that. And ultimately they found this is very successful at relieving these symptoms, and that the people who benefit most have a true mystical experience during their session. And if you don't have that experience, you may not get as much benefit. Okay, next slide, please. This study that came out last week, Canadian study, and this is kind of adding into the research that we have. I was talking about psilocybin. This is the first psilocybin study in Canada. And it was 21 patients. They included some more severe patients than normally get into these studies with major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. Often bipolar patients are excluded from these studies. They used between 1 and 3 doses of psilocybin, and they allowed for repeated dose if there was relapse. And this was very successful as far as treating their depression. And just kind of paint a little bit of a picture about what this is, because like, what are you doing? What, you just give these people and they're tripping out? What? No, this is a very controlled environment. So under research protocols and clinical situations, people will generally have a couple of counseling sessions prior to the experience. When they have the psychedelic experience, there will be 2 sitters present, generally a male and a female. The typical dose that's given is about 25 milligrams, and that's equivalent to about 3 grams of dried mushrooms. And that'll produce a psychedelic effect of around 6 hours. So you got these 2 sitters, patient there, often there's music playing, classical kind of stuff. Patient may have blindfolds, headphones on, and there's 2 sitters, and they may interact or may not. And this goes for about 6 hours, and you can see here already how this is difficult research. You know, you got 2 people monitoring them the whole time for 6 hours. Good reason why we don't do LSD research, because it takes 12 hours for people to come around. You know, everybody's sitting around just waiting for them to sober up. Oh, we've got to close up the lab. So it's really, you know, psilocybin is the way to go. So really what they find is that it's got a similar effect to escitalopram. That was one study, which is one of our traditional SSRIs. Interestingly, if you're on SSRIs, you're unlikely to get benefit from the psilocybin. It really tends to dampen the experience. So people often have to taper off a bit before they do a psilocybin session. Next slide, please. Right now in Canada, there are 69 sources that are approved to produce psilocybin. They're producing it for the Special Access Program, and they're producing it for research trials around the world. Currently in Canada, you can access psilocybin as a patient only through trials or through the Special Access Program. And that can be difficult. There's only been 176 Canadians approved to use psilocybin since February of 2022. They approve about 3/4 of their applications, but you know, if you had one application that went through, the second one might not, if you're depressed again. And right now there are 36 clinical psilocybin trials approved in Canada. Next slide, please. Issues with this therapy. Overall, the medical side effects are uncommon. A couple years back, there's a guy who's trying to get me to start up a psilocybin clinic. I don't know what a doctor would do there because there's not much big issues. As long as you don't have big issues with psychosis, generally there's not going to be any issues. But it's very expensive. It's very time consuming. You know, we talked about those a couple sessions before, then the experience, then a reintegration session after. So all these counseling sessions, people, it's huge amounts of time and it's huge amounts of money. So if you're doing psychedelic therapy, often it's going to cost, you know, thousands of dollars. Special Access Program, they may or may not approve your application. There's no real kind of guidance, so it can be quite capricious. Another issue is there's kind of a lack of representation. Most people involved in the psychedelic field look like me. That's a product of the patriarchy. And, you know, and that's how things are. But there's, you know, it's like the mushrooms, they came from indigenous people, and that's not always reflected in the kind of experience. You also need to look at the role of ritual. You know, a lot of the indigenous people would have rituals that would associate the taking of these substances, and we're just giving it. You know, is there you know, more help with ritual being present? And there's the stigma of the psychedelic experience. A lot of big pharma companies are trying to come up with something that'll hit those receptors but not cause psychedelic experience. But it kind of seems like psychedelic experience is kind of what is needed to make this work. So it's kind of up and down. And as always, there's problems with big pharma and intellectual property, and they're always trying to copyright all kinds of things and products as part of this. All right, next slide. Last, I will leave you with resources. Just an article from the CBC and a couple of articles that you may find interesting. And the kind of local psilocybin agency is Therapsil. They're on Vancouver Island. So they have a website and lots of interesting stuff to check out there. Thank you so much. And that's the end of my talk.
Any questions?
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. How do you see the psilocybin policy evolving in the coming years? You know, like we saw what happened with cannabis. They gave it to physicians to prescribe. They didn't prescribe, and then it kind of. Like, what do you see? Something similar? Or?
Yeah, it's going to be a similar kind of thing. And ultimately, there will be recreational psilocybin available in stores. And I mean, right now there is that available in stores in Vancouver. You can go down and places to buy things. But for a purified thing, for doctors to use it, Probably about another 5 years, I'm thinking, like within that time frame, it'll be available, as a prescription.
And for the recreational use that you say that there needs to be seaters and things, like, from a public health perspective, what do we need to be thinking about?
So obviously, from a public health perspective, you're gonna have limited dosage, and you're gonna have a lot of education around this. And I think there will be almost, I think there'll be an almost informal network of sitters that will, or advisors, guides, that will be kind of, you'll be able to select and, get your stuff and then go talk something. But ultimately, people can take low doses and, you're microdosing and all these kind of things. So I think that's going to come up in a big way too. Lots of people have so much interest in that.
Good.
Yeah, I was just curious about the effects beyond the 6 hours. Is there studies or research that shows that there's benefits beyond that initial?
Of the psilocybin?
Yes.
Yeah, so the effects of the depression, the antidepressant effects last for about up to 6 months.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, with ketamine, they'll last for about a week or so, and then you have to redose. But for psilocybin, often you'll get months of relief out of that.
Oh, okay.
And depressive effect, and then they can redose.
Yeah, and is there an option for somebody to pay them by themselves?
Not currently for psilocybin. For ketamine, there are certain clinics that are available. There's one in Kelowna. Alberta has set out a structure for psychedelic therapy. I would say it must be a psychiatrist who runs the clinic, and they have kind of ketamine stuff, and they're kind of like just waiting to get in for psilocybin. But the guy who runs it kind of works a lot with the police, and is not particularly equitable, I think. So my concern is how can this be accessible to everybody?
Right.
And that's the biggest problem I face.
Thank you.
Both with ketamine and psilocybin.
Thank you.
Do we have time? Are you aware of the, we know that depression and anxiety, like some of the issues that ketamine and psilocybin can address are quite expensive to our health, to our public health system. Are you aware of any studies looking at the health economy of the use of psilocybin or ketamine to address some of these concerns?
Good question. I don't know that I've seen anything in that kind of framework. I think there's a lot of interest in that kind of stuff, but I haven't seen anything definitely in that framework. Yeah. All right, thank you so much.
I'm now honored to introduce Professor Luis Racine, Associate Dean of Research and Graduate Studies at the University of Saskatchewan. On a matter of utmost significance, cultural competence, and safety in cancer prevention and screening.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and I want to thank you all for the opportunity to share some time with you today and to participate in this event. And I'm very grateful to Dr. D'Souza for that event. And I'm sending greetings from Saskatchewan. So today I want to say from the start that I'm not a cancer specialist. I'm a nurse ethnographer, so I see cancer from a cultural perspective. So that's what we will see. I would like to provide an overview of the presentation. So can you advance the slide? Okay, so I want to speak a bit, and I know that you already know that, about cultural competency and cultural safety, but what is more interesting is how we will apply these concepts into a SSHRC-funded insight research about gender, religion, and breast cancer awareness. So without due delay, I will start with defining what is cultural competency. So cultural competency is something that we that we achieve both at the individual and organizational level. We call that a process that requires nurse and other healthcare professionals to have the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities to respect and understand how culture influences people's individual and groups health and health decision and their decision-making process related to health or the promotion of their health or the restoration of their health. if we look at the dimension of this particular cultural competency has 3 dimensions. So the first dimension is affective, the second is cognitive, and the third one is practical. When we talk about affective dimension, we talk about the notion of cultural desire and cultural awareness. When we talk about cognitive, it refers really to knowledge, the acquisition of cultural knowledge, and practical, that's the application of the affective and the cognitive into a process that we call cultural encounters. So cultural desire, cultural awareness, and cultural knowledge are the prerequisite for successful cultural encounters. So cultural encounters implies that the application of both the affective and cognitive dimension into the practice. So in other words, cultural competency cannot occur if there's no cultural encounters, even if the cultural desire is there, and even if the cultural awareness is also present. It needs the practical, which is the cultural encounters. As when we look at cultural safety, we look at a process that is very, very different. It's oriented towards the nurse. It's really focusing on the power relation and how these power relation influence the delivery of nursing care and how nurse or other healthcare professional will think or apprehend the professional health encounters and how they will think and interact with people coming from other cultures. So cultural safety is an introspective and reflexive process by which nurses and other healthcare professionals will explore their biases, their attitudes, and their stereotypes, and how these stereotypes I don't know who can advance the slide, but it's on the slide on cultural safety. How our cultural safety is something that needs to be introspectively examined in order to see the quality, how it can affect. If I lack cultural safety, then it will affect the way that I'm delivering care to the patient. So it's a reflexive practice. It supports critical examination, especially of power imbalance that we know occur within not only society, but also within the healthcare system as we know it. And culture, when we talk about cultural safety, we also introduce the concept of social justice, especially addressing the health inequities that affects people in globally and locally in our healthcare system. And it also talks about the process of othering, especially othering means marginalization. That could be social marginalization, that could be cultural marginalization or racialization. So these are processes that really relates, and it's very difficult to dissociate cultural safety, which even if different from cultural competency, they complement each other and needs to be present if we want to provide culturally competent and safe care. And for that particular research, we'll be using both postcolonial and intersectionality theory. Now, why are we doing that? So here I'm providing, I guess that everyone knows about that, breast cancer in the world and in Canada. It's breast cancer is the second most common cancer and one of the leading cause of cancer mortality around the world. It's also one that benefits from early detection and has very good outcome if we can detect it early and screen it early. Breast cancer is also the first cause of cancer among Canadian women and the second cause of mortality. 5,400 deaths related to breast cancer occurred in Canada in 2023 among females, but when properly diagnosed and treated, the life expectancy of 5-year survival rate and life expectancy is longer, and it could be benefit 89% of the women. Yet, despite these advancements in our society about breast cancer and the decrease in this incidence and mortality rate, there's a dearth of knowledge about refugee women and how they deal with breast cancer. So there is our study focused on Muslim refugee women, not immigrant, because there are some epidemiological risks that let us believe and assume that this particular group of the population, these women coming from war-torn country, from refugee camps, could be at higher risk of vulnerability. So this is where cultural safety and cultural competency intersect with the breast cancer issue, and especially among refugee women. If we look at some epidemiological data, there was a survey in 22 Arab countries that revealed a high incidence rate of breast cancer. And I won't go into detail about that survey. And some other studies also describe low screening rates among Muslim, native, and also refugee women that have been documented in the Gulf country, in Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, and other countries in the Muslim world. So there's a low participation also in breast awareness activities that raise specific concern, especially among Syrian and Iraqi refugee women. And this is mostly those studies coming from the Arab world. And the other concern is that most of the women who have been diagnosed in these countries present early onset of the disease, and also are diagnosed at a later stage of the illness, which really compromise their survival rate compared to Western European and North American women. And the other thing that pushes us to explore this problematic is the fact that being the refugee status intersect and adds more complexity to the problem, especially the fact that there has been experience of traumatic experience, war experience, also loss of displacement, forced migration, and issues of gender disparity means that being a refugee woman increases the risk, especially if we think about, for our case, about breast cancer. So this is what we have in terms of our lit review. So we have submitted and we're happy to be funded by SHRC to do a study to capture the interplay between race, gender norms and role, Islamic faith and refugee status, and how these factors can really affect or influence or intersect with the social context of resettlement in Canada to influence breast awareness among this particular group of women. And we know that Muslim refugee women are currently underrepresented both globally and in Canada in health studies, especially studies related to health disparities. So our objective, we want to understand gender norms, we want to understand the roles and the cultural beliefs and the social structures that may affect women's perspective. And on top of that, if we see something, then there are barriers, we want to develop a culturally sensitive and faith-positive message to increase breast awareness. So the results are likely to influence attitudes and provide women with informed decision related to their breast health. And our research questions are quite straightforward. So we look at, again, how do gender relation and social structures affect the refugee woman understanding and performance of breast awareness activities, and what could be the cultural and faith-related barriers that may impact women participation in breast awareness activities or screening programs. We'll be using the intersectionality theory, and I won't go that much into explaining why, but it's really for us to see that gender and other social factors may act as structural barrier. There are issues of power relation, and we really want to use that lens in order to provide the in-depth examination of where these factors may interact to create or to sustain health inequities. So that's a critical analysis of breast awareness among refugee women that we will undertake. As for the methodology and the methods, for the moment, we need to know more about the topic. So we are doing a qualitative exploratory research. We have a sample of 30 Muslim Arab refugee women. And one part, half of the study is being conducted in BC and the other half here in Saskatchewan. And we are conducting individual interview. The study has started both in BC and in Saskatchewan. Why we do individual interviews with women? Because we want to know their perspective and their beliefs about breast cancer, about screening, and know what could be the gender role that may affect their choice in terms of being screened or not, or their beliefs. And we also want to contextualize, to provide a context to these beliefs and their perspective within the social, cultural, and gendered environment, which may affect health promoting behavior or not. So we don't have the answer for that. We will also have focus groups, one with male and one with females, because we know that from lit review and from past experience with research that it's important to interview both males and females. For the focus groups interview, we will look at what Cohen and Aziza in their cultural scale, they develop some concepts, some dimension like the religious beliefs. We'll look into that. What are the religious beliefs related to cancer and the cure of cancer? What could be the social barriers, or especially issue of stigma of losing a social status or social roles due to breast cancer, accessibility issues that relates a lot to the resettlement context, which is language, geographic situation, and institutional barrier, how to access the healthcare system. And also we know for exposure barriers can also related to modesty could also become barriers for screening. And it's derived basically from a scale that was developed by Aziza and Cohen. So what could be the expected outcomes, especially the social outcomes of this study? This project will support the development and implementation of culturally safe breast awareness messages grounded in the faith in Islam social and cultural context, because we have seen in the literature that faith can also be a facilitator. And not we should not see that as a barrier, but also as a facilitator to push women to go into screening. The findings also will contribute to culturally competent, safe policies related to healthcare and cancer prevention, especially when we look at refugee women and refugee study. We don't have a lot of that. There's some in the United States and in other receiving countries like Norway. There's also a receiving country like Turkey are more advanced than us. The findings will promote also women's education and create their condition of empowerment for the women to be able to make the decision and to look after their wellness and their health. And also it's interesting to build intergenerational community capacity to empower women and to create the social and professional support where women will benefit from knowledge and will develop their own community knowledge support to access better care and to provide better health outcome for breast cancer. So I am privileged to work with such a great team from Thompson River University and also from the University of Victoria and our own people here from the University of Saskatchewan. So I've provided a list of reference, but it's if you need more reference, that's okay. But this is most of the reference that I have for this presentation, and I thank you for your attention and for listening to this presentation. And I don't know, Melba, if I need to take question now or later.
Take questions now, Dr. Lewis. If anyone's having any questions, you can address them.
Can she hear me if I speak?
Yeah. You will need to speak loud if speak.
Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I'm Silvina Mema. I'm with a public health physician, and I'm interested to know, you gave a good list of factors there that you're going to be exploring, and knowing that refugee women are, typically low socioeconomic status, right, in Canada. I wonder if you're taking that into account in the research, because we know that, people with low socioeconomic status will have lower cancer screening rates than others. So I didn't see that listed, and I just thought I would ask.
Yeah, and I'm careful. I understand low socioeconomic status. I'm very careful with that construct, actually. However, we are collecting also in that study. We are also collecting two scales of information. The first scale is demographic data. For sure that we are asking the level of education. For me, in a previous study that we did with Sigma Theta Tau for a small grant, we saw that the level of education was a statistically significant predictor of if women decide to go for a clinical breast examination or a mammogram. So of course, we'll take into account those social demographic variable, but we have operating from the perspective, that we are the theoretical perspective that we are operating, we want to avoid, creating more marginalization. So of course, we'll take that into account, but on the other hand, we are very interested also in what we can do to help the women. So far, I have conducted 4 interviews here in Saskatchewan, and we see some similarity and difference, but it really depends also. Our sample is quite diversified. We have women coming from Syria, but also from Chad and other countries. So I believe that I agree with you that social economic status might influence, but it may be related to the level of education. So we have to be careful before making any constructing any association or relationship, but being mindful that it's exploratory research, so we'll find things. And also, but I believe the level of education is something that is a very strong factor in terms of what is cancer, what are the causes, and to know that will be a great step for us. Know that from the perspective of the women, I mean.
Thank you, Professor Racine. Community-engaged participants like yourself play a pivotal role in ensuring that the strategies we develop are not only culturally competent, but also resonate with the communities we represent.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we'll keep you posted with that. And I work with Dr. D'Souza and Dr. Homaone, and that will be extremely interesting. I am sad to leave you, but I need to go to another meeting. But if there's any question you would like to ask to us and to me and to the team, please email me at louise.racine@usask.ca, and I will be delighted to provide you with some more information. Thank you for your time.
I'm honored to now invite Michael Cohen, founder and director of clinical services, CanSolve, and president of Mind Team's Mental Health Solutions, to address you on a topic that delves into the realms of possibility, innovation, and alternative cancer care therapies.
Well, hello everybody. Let's talk about cannabis. This is a wonderful opportunity to reach out to our community. This is very, very exciting for me to be here. Next slide, please. So I just want to welcome both everybody here locally in the Kamloops region and for anybody who's connecting remotely who might be in another country or another part of our country, welcome to Kamloops and welcome to our home. It's very exciting. And I'd just like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Secwepemc Nation, and I'm grateful for our opportunity today to be able to gather here and share of our knowledge and our experiences. Next slide, please. So, next slide, thank you. So I work within industry, and I am the person who is going to industry saying things are too expensive. There are too many barriers to access. The rules are too restrictive. It is too difficult for people to access the help and the care that they need. And my way of addressing this is to actually become a licensed producer of cannabis, work within the industry, and work towards the very first social licensed producer of cannabis that is focused on people and not profit. So as I walk into this, and as you see that I work with all of these cannabis companies, I do so to encourage the system to change and improve for the sake of patients and people in need and their families. Next slide, please. So very briefly about myself. I am a self-taught cannabis clinician. As we've talked a little bit about knowledge transfer, in the area of actual medical cannabis being used strategically and intentionally, there is a huge lack of ability to get formal training, to get practical training, to be able to work within a clinic to help people and families to know just what to do, how to do it, taking out a lot of the confusion and making this a practical kind of thing to do. And so my work in particular here in Kamloops, anybody who knows the Welcome Back MRI and Pain Management Center downtown, I was one of the co-founders of that center. I'm the owner of the CanSolve Clinic. I work with Dr. Ian Mitchell, a wonderful colleague, an incredible man who has given a tremendous amount to our community, and I'm very thankful to be able to work with him. I'm trained as a registered clinical counselor. I work particularly in the areas where there is very high need and very high cost. So I am often the practitioner of last resort after a motor vehicle accident, workplace accident, serious disease process where we've exhausted a lot of traditional types of things, and here we are going to the cannabis clinic. And so when you arrive, my goal is to assist you through that entire process. Next slide, please. So very simple, my mission, I want to improve our world by helping people who suffer to thrive. The key word being thrive. I am excited to be able to do clinical research and practical clinical work that not only focuses on just helping people get by, but people matter, the families matter, people's hopes and dreams and desires matter, and we must align with that. So I work on thriving. So as a clinical researcher, I'm very grateful to have a partnership in doing some clinical research with TRU and UBC Okanagan through some incredible people. I'd like to very much so thank Dr. Florian Fair for being a person to stand up and create something from nothing in the cannabis world here in Kamloops, and particularly at this institution. She is an amazing human being pushing forth great research, great teams, great collaboration, everything that is in the spirit of today. I'd also like to thank Dr. Carolyn McCallum, who I've done some work in education and research with, and some of her work you will see today. So I just want to make sure I thank her for her contributions and collaboration with me. Next slide, please. All right, let's go over some objectives really quickly. I want you to have a knowledge transfer experience today while we talk through this. And I'm going to do so by sharing what patients have taught me so I can pass this along to you. It's coming from the front lines. It's coming from people that are doing this to make it very practical. And so we're learning from the people that know. And in doing so, in our work, we said we need to simplify all of this. Well, how do we do it? One of the things is telling you about what we call the 3 yes rule. So very quickly and easily, you can define treatment success from the point of view of the patient, and you can apply the same strategy you learn here today to any therapy, to any intervention. And we're going to talk a little bit as well about clinical best practices, how they are assistive, how they can support, but also to ensure that we have the balance in saying, I am not presenting a cure-all here today. I'm certainly not saying cannabis alone is necessarily going to be enough to produce the desired results, but it is extremely important that we see what we can do. And there. And I also want to inspire some curiosity, perhaps for people that may think, cannabis, I'm not so sure about all of that, and I don't really want to put myself, even dip a toe maybe into that. But I'd like to inspire some curiosity and thoughtful discussion about how this may be useful in helping patients with any needs. And today specifically, we'll talk a little bit about cancer. Next slide, please. So very quickly, we're going to talk about how patients are using medical cannabis to achieve their outcomes, a little brief review of some important literature that I think may be helpful for people that are interested in learning more about this, and then we'll open up an opportunity for dialogue. If we have time for questions, great. If not, I'll be next door through the lunch break and everything, and I'll be here for the rest of the day. Please come see me and talk. I would love to chat with you. Next slide, please. So we learn best in change from hearing stories that strike a chord within us. And so I would like to tell you very briefly about a very important story, next slide please, occurring right here in our community. And part of the reason why I really want to thank Florian for her incredible work that she's done here is she helped to form a team, including Dr. Mitchell, Dr. McCallum, Dr. Malloy, Dr. Walsh, Bob Hughes, some amazing people that have all joined together on an advisory board to start a study of the first of its kind in the world of embedding a medical cannabis clinic into a supported recovery facility for helping to tackle the overdose crisis. So people coming out of the toxic drug supply into supported housing, into detox, into physician support, medication supplied to this with as little barrier as possible to try new, minimally to non-impairing cannabinoid formulas. We're not taking people from drugs and making them high. We are taking people and applying chemical formulas that do jobs. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And so right here in town, we started what we called the Maverick Study. And through it, we have people who have come from the streets, stabilized, experienced their own improvements, share that knowledge, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we can transfer that knowledge to cancer care. And the reason being is folks that have come off the streets out of the toxic drug supply have every psychological, every physical, every psychosocial, every possible symptom we could imagine, including cancer. And they show up all at once with all of those things. So they're incredible teachers, lots and lots of things they can teach us. Next slide, please. All right, so one of the very first most important lessons we learned right off the bat is about something called agenda alignment, which is where, as practitioners, we all want to come in and do what we can to help. But what does help mean? And each particular patient and their families all have an agenda around what is important to them. And by identifying from the very beginning what matters to the person in front of you, you can then build every intervention, support, and resource you want to bring once you know how it serves. As opposed to saying, I think this will serve. Please teach me from your perspective first about what would serve. And so agenda alignment is our first tool to take away. And from a psychological perspective, when people are agenda aligned, it actually really eliminates resistance because it's patient-led, patient-centered. So when a patient thinks, hey, you've got this, you understand me, then they can say, let's go. And from both a resource standpoint and an efficacy standpoint, we'll use less resources and have better outcomes if we start with agenda alignment. So checking in with the patient, finding out how we can help them. Next slide, please. So interestingly enough, Dr. McCallum in some of her research said, well, why do patients actually even come to the medical cannabis clinic? What are they looking for? Well, they want to improve quality of life, function, they want to have their pain medications work better, sleep, mood, anxiety, and they want to be able to have a reduction in medications that may have some help, but they also may have some side effect burden that can affect a person's quality of life. And so what's sort of interesting in these patient treatment goals here, we're actually not specifically looking at cancer, but again, the transference is absolutely one-to-one for what we're looking at. So it's interesting that the work we do in one can apply to another. Next slide, please. The next thing we learned is to be informed. And to everyone's credit who's here today, who is actually becoming informed, way to go. This is our second tool that's so important. And when a patient understands that you are informed, and you're informed from trusted sources, as opposed to in the medical cannabis industry, we have a huge legacy and history of stigma and distortion, and not necessarily as much an evidence basis, but very much a cultural bias that has emerged from history with this. And so if we go by bias and we go by history, we may either ignore or downplay the potential role for something that could serve. So I encourage all of us here today to look at cannabis as a tool, no different than any other tool we would consider. And that's extremely important for those families and patients that find that this tool is useful. When there is stigma attached, it creates a shame, a guilt, a blame, a judgment, which certainly no patient needs or deserves. Okay, next slide, please. So being informed often starts at the basics here, and don't worry about knowing all of this, but what I want to impart about you is that cannabis is not one thing. Cannabis is a rainbow, and it's like picking a color out of it and saying, I know the rainbow, see, red. No, but what about the rest of the rainbow? No, I have it, it's one color. And so in cannabis, we largely break it down into a major and minor cannabinoids. Lots of people know about THC and CBD, but in fact, the plant has over 500 active compounds that interact with human health in a variety of very interesting and very useful ways. So the first thing I want to do is just break that barrier saying that, cannabis is, we smoke a joint and we get high. And I would argue that, in fact, that view of cannabis has done more harm to prevent people from seeking out the tool set. Because, in fact, the vast majority of the work we do is not that old school smoking high impairment aspect of this. It is utility cannabis, which is what tool, what job. So next slide, please. And I want to particularly, for people who haven't heard of this, there are 3 major categories of cannabis where you'll find the compounds: raw, heated, and aged. So we can talk more about them in just a sec here. Next slide. Patients reported improving results using non-impairing cannabis tools, including what are called the acid forms of cannabinoids. We know THC and CBD, but, next slide please, have we heard of CBDA, THCA? Well, if you kept the plant raw, and those are my pictures, by the way, that's me making a raw shake with this. And in our work, we're finding that the plant is far more complex than we ever imagined. And the jobs that we can harness this plant to do involve going back to nature, having less human processing and involvement, and then seeking to understand the utility of those tools. Again, minimally to non-impairing oral preparations are the mainstay of treatment. Next slide, please. In addition, we have what we call the activated or heated forms of cannabis. So we have people that use a CBD topical or a THC topical. We have oral oils of CBD, THC, and other compounds. And we have, of course, the old school way where people will still consume by inhalation, though we use vaporization as opposed to combustion. We don't want patients burning if we can get them vaporizing for that sort of thing. Next slide, please. And there is a new category, which is interesting, in the minor cannabinoids that are the aged cannabinoids. So a plant that is left to its own devices will actually completely chemically change from when it was fresh to when it's aged. And in doing so, we have new compounds. We have CBN, for example, which a lot of people are interested to understand how can these tools serve in our needs. Again, oral preparations, and they're through the whole marketplace here more and more. CBG, THCV being a couple of the other ones that we really want to mention. Next. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the 3 yes rule and how we define success here. And so clear and understandable criteria for treatment success. Next slide, please. And so from Dr. McCallum's literature, back in 2018, she did an amazing paper with Dr. Ethan Russo. And they talked about the clinical usage of cannabis, which is very limited in the literature. So medical cannabis patients, in contrast to the recreational users, are frequently using what they call the CBD predominant chemovars, which means non-impairing, something that is going to assist with treatments but isn't going to take away function. So they want to have their symptom control, function, and quality of life measures to improve. 1, 2, 3, with the fewest number of adverse events. Okay, next slide, please. Treatment success in our work in medical cannabis is defined by the patient saying 3 yeses or 3 nos. 3 yeses are required, by the way. There is no, we got 2 out of 3 and let's just call it a day. It must be all 3. And so in particular, if you were to sit down with a patient and you were to say, okay, we've got a new tool, I'd like you to try this oil. And what I'd like you to report on is if you believe that you're having an improvement in your symptom, whether it's pain, whether it's anxiety, whether it's sleep. I want to know, first of all, do you have increased control over that symptom group that you're working with? Great. If we have a yes, fantastic, we're on the right track. Next, I want to know that you have an improved function. If you get those benefits, but you're completely sedated and unable to participate in the things you want to do, not okay. We're not there. So if we get a yes to function, I'm getting all the benefits, I still function, then I ask, well, how is your quality of life? With those 2 factors happening, how are we doing? Yes to the third one? Fantastic. We're on the right track, lock it down, let's get going from here. And so we've taken thousands and thousands of medical cannabis products and the colors of the rainbow, and we've gone here, 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 lock it down. There you are. 3 yeses or nos. Now look, you could substitute cannabis with yoga. You could substitute cannabis with mindfulness. It's really fine to use the exact 3-part formula to ask about any treatment. And then patients get that you get it. And they're like, we're connected, we're agenda aligned. You understand me because you're speaking my language, and the resistance melts. Because now we're there. All right, next thing we learned here is match the treatment to the need. So are we going to talk about a as needed kind of approach, or are we talking about 24/7 continuous care? Quite often, that's what we are looking at when we talk about cancer therapy, is we have symptoms that may be present in the daytime, in the nighttime. They may be predictable, they may be unpredictable. And so in our work, again, oral preparations that are minimally to non-impairing are the mainstay of treatment. We have a daytime focus with very strong emphasis on people being able to function without being sedated. And during the nighttime, we may see a sedation side effect as actually a clinically desired benefit. But we need to make sure that people are educated, they know what to use, when to use it, and I've matched it to your needs so that you get it. At nighttime, you want to rest and sleep, and you're okay with feeling sedated, but not during the daytime, because you have things to do. And when we align, it becomes clear how we use the medication. So match to the patient's needs 24/7 with some as needed if people have a breakthrough and need control. Next slide, please. So again, chronic conditions, there we are. Right out of the literature, we are going to be using the oral preparations. Inhalation is available, similar as a PRN in any medication, so people can use inhaled formats. Again, vaporization is the preferred format for that, and the minimally to non-impairing formulations in the inhalation therapy. We match that both oral and inhaled. CBD is one of these cannabinoids that can be useful to act as a bit of a brake, bit of a drag chute, and it can limit the potential for people to experience too much impairment or intoxication and help provide some balance. Buffer agents like CBD, THCA, and CBD can be very useful in helping patients to feel comfortable and in control of their cannabis experience through the entire, whether they're brand new or they're seasoned users. Next slide, please. And so I think it was really, really valuable. Colleen was mentioning in her great presentation earlier here today about the things she likes to do. She said, I'm an avid cyclist. I like to get out and I like to do things. And so when we ask the question, is cannabis alone enough? Next slide, please. We need to talk a little bit about how we can answer that question. So in our work, we look at what we call the think, can, do formula. The first is we have to start with the end in mind. So we identify the patient agenda, the agenda alignment, and we let them know, compliance, you're gonna need to use this if it's gonna work. Consistency, you're gonna need to use it on a regular basis, okay? And commitment, we're going to need to hold the course on cannabis. And if we do, then we will be able to realize the best benefits. And if not, we're not likely to get it if we just dip our toe into it. All right, the can part is, what are you actually going to use? It's like you're hiring for a job. Don't think about cannabis as cannabis. Think about it as, I'm hiring you for this symptom, for this job, for this time of day. I'm hiring you for this, then I put you on probation and I test. Does it meet the 3 yeses? And if it does, you're hired. Welcome to the team. And if I try those particular cannabis and I go, whoa, that is not the right fit for me, does not pass probation, fired, on to the next candidate. And once we have this ability to assemble a team that works for you, they are now something you can lock down and keep relatively consistent, because with cannabis, we don't typically see huge changes in dosing. Once we've arrived where we are, it's typically very, very stable. But extremely important to focus on the third part of this, which is the do. So with cannabis, it's always about adding something plus to the cannabis. Big or small, whatever it is within the person's own world that matters to them, symptom improvement and increased quality of life comes from doing. So whether that's, like Colleen was saying, going out on that cycling, great. Cannabis can actually support your symptom control to enable you to be more active, whether that's socially, whether that's physically. When we get the formula right, we can support the patient's goals and outcomes. Next slide, please. All right, so let's just tie it all together here in our knowledge transfer. Number one, seek proper advice. So that means that individuals need to have physician guidance and clinical support. The average person who walks into a cannabis store, which is everywhere, and says, okay, I have cancer and I need symptom support. First thing at the store, they can't help you. If you say, I'm a medical patient and I'm asking for a cannabis product to treat my symptoms, they, whoa, no. I can read to you the label, I can tell you what percentage of these things are, but I absolutely cannot give you treatment guidance or advice. When you come to a clinic, similar to like ours, or if you see your family doctor, you can actually speak about matching tools to jobs. You're going through a different path where you are working through licensed channels, and the physician can actually set up a treatment program for you so you know what to follow, what to do. You're not sifting through thousands of products. You're going, I was told to get this and that and use it like this, which is very medical, very utility-based in its work. Number two, be informed. Be curious about cannabis again, where we say it's different today. It's modern today. It's Health Canada regulated. Labels are mandatory. Lab testing is mandatory. Recall processes, the kinds of things that we can build confidence into a medical channel of products that are safe and effective for us to use, especially when physician guidance is included in that and clinical support. Number three, define success. We just go into cannabis and we go, all right, let's see what this can do. The question will be, well, what are we trying to do? Let's determine what success looks like. Next, let's match the treatment to the needs. Is it 24/7? Is it as needed? Is it both? And lastly, it's extremely important that we remember that cannabis alone is not enough. We need to match this with lifestyle change. We saw some fantastic data here earlier about some of the factors that maybe we can make a difference with. And so I would encourage us to use cannabis as an adjunct, as a tool to traditional pharmacology, in addition to lifestyle change, diet change, and these other factors that are proven to make a difference in cancer care. So a great big thank you to everybody here, and especially to the first annual KT World Café Summit. A great congratulations to Dr. D'Souza, Dr. Fair, and as I know you must have a phenomenal team behind you of people we can see in the room today and others who maybe aren't here as well. If you'd like to reach out to me, my contact information is on the screen. I've probably gone too long, but if we have time for questions, I'd be happy to. Otherwise, come join me over at the lunch. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thanks so much for this opportunity. I'm just going to start by saying my presentation will not be nearly as engaging or as well formatted as the speaker before me. So well done, and let's talk presentation formats after the break. My name is Jen Edgecombe. I work for BC Cancer. I work for a team called Provincial Programs, and the portfolio that I work in is called the Manager of Supportive Care and Patient and Family Experience. And wouldn't be appropriate not to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Indigenous keepers of the traditional and unceded lands where I have the privilege of living, working, and playing, situated on the Tk'emlúps-Shuswet'en. And this is one of my favorite views in Kamloops. I think we've all probably, if you live here, you've probably stood in Kenneth Cartwright and thought, wow, thanks for letting me call this home. So my presentation goal maybe is a little bit different. I'm coming with an agenda. I'm hoping we can have a conversation. I'm going to talk for a little bit, but I'm really hoping that we can have a discussion. So this presentation was co-designed with the Medical Director of Supportive Care, Dr. Alan Bates from BC Cancer, the Executive Director of Professional Practice, and the Abbotsford Regional Centre, Ruby Gitta. And I've been sent to collect some information. So we work really closely about delivering supportive care services and creating the strategic approach for supportive care across BC. So what we want to know is, how can BC Cancer increase awareness amongst clinicians and providers about, and I'm going to say we use something called supportive care rounds, and we're going to talk about that, but about supportive care. And how can BC Cancer improve knowledge about self-management resources amongst patients and caregivers who are treated at a community oncology network close to their home, like Kamloops? And I've put the little star because what's going to happen with this information is I'm going to collect the information. I'm going to bring it back to some working groups that I'm on at BC Cancer, and we're going to see what suggestions or input or engagement we can use to take us in a new direction. So it's not necessarily that whatever you ask we're going to be able to get, but that's what the information is going to go to. Thank you. And I'm sure I've heard people mention this before, so I wanted to mention BC's 10-year Cancer Action Plan. So if you're not aware of the Cancer Plan, it's really important that I start with, this is a ministry document. The Ministry of Health developed the 10-year Cancer Action Plan. It was released in January of 2023 and published in February of 2023. There are 4 strategies within the Cancer Plan: prevent and detect cancer, ensure timely access to treatment, work in partnership along the cancer care system. This one's long, but it's basically just system enablers. Get the people, get the right tech in place, get all of those system enablers in place so that we can move forward. And if you haven't read the Cancer Plan, it's a really short, easy bedtime read. It's only about 85 pages. You'll love it. But it's a really great document, and it can be found here. Next slide. The purpose of this slide is to make sure that there's really clarity in this room about how BC Cancer participates in cancer care in British Columbia. So BC Cancer operates 6 regional sites. We're in Abbotsford, Surrey, Kelowna's our closest, Prince George, Vancouver, Victoria. At those 6 sites, we offer assessment, diagnostic services, systemic therapy, which is chemotherapy, immunotherapy, radiation therapy, and then supportive care. What we have here in Kamloops is called a community oncology network, and those are all around the province, and they are in partnership, they're delivered in partnership with the health authority to provide chemotherapy, sometimes immunotherapy, closer to home for more British Columbians. So it's a very important distinction that community oncology networks are in partnership with the health authority. Next slide. This is brilliant. Has anybody ever heard of the bow tie model? So there is an absolutely brilliant physician at BC Cancer. Her name is Dr. Pippa Howley. She is the medical director for pain and symptom management and palliative care. And she saw that linear trajectory of cancer care and immediately got offended by it, because cancer care for most people is not linear. It's a bit more up and down. We have some curative elements of our therapy options. We have control options or control elements of our therapy options. Sometimes people go into survivorship and rehabilitation. Sometimes people go to hospice towards bereavement, and none of this is linear. But the one thing that is consistent throughout the entire bow tie model is supportive care. Supportive care is woven throughout. So you can look that up online. It's on our website. It's on the BC Cancer website. I just like these. I've completely plagiarized this from the BC Cancer website. I just love the philosophies of supportive care at BC Cancer. To me, it feels really beautiful. Everyone's experience is unique. We want to give each patient and family member a safe place to be heard, appreciated, and accepted. We offer a wide range of programs to help BC Cancer patients manage the physical, emotional, social, practical concerns that come with having a cancer diagnosis and treatment. Again, completely plagiarized, I just really like it. This is important. The Barrel Institute is one of our governing bodies within patient and family experience. And what they say is nothing about us without us. At BC Cancer, we don't make our programs without our end user at the table. So we have patients like Colleen who join us on working groups, projects, committees, and help us to make decisions to make sure that we put the patients at the forefront of their health and their care. We ensure that patients retain control over their choices. We help patients make informed decisions, and we support partnerships between patients, families, and healthcare providers. And if you want to know more about patient and family experience at BC Cancer, the URL is at the bottom. Okay. BC Cancer, the main core supportive care services that we offer. Nutrition, really important, so registered dietitians. And I talk a little bit about scope. So dietitians at BC Cancer, they work with patients for decreased appetite, unwanted weight loss, dry mouth, taste changes, nausea, bowel changes, but also dehydration and some life-limiting nutrition issues. Patient and family counseling consists of registered clinical counselors and master-level social workers. They can provide emotional support, but also practical and financial support. Like if I had cancer tomorrow, I would have a lot of practical concerns that I would need help with to make it to my therapies. Psychiatry, so psychiatrists are medical doctors who specialize in mental health, specifically depression, anxiety, personality changes, and psychiatric medications. Pain and symptom management and palliative care. It's a multidisciplinary team. So our PSMPC team is physicians, nurses, LPNs, social workers, clerical staff. The list goes on. Physiotherapists, not part of our core team you'll see, but they are part of PSMPC. And speech and language pathologists, which improve swallowing and communication difficulties that are secondary to a lot of cancer therapies. Okay, so in the work we do in BC Cancer, we like to think of two different opportunities currently. We want the patient to have more access to more services, more self-management resources, and more information about what is available. To date, some of the work that we've been doing is around groups. So online groups, in-person groups at the different centers, self-management resources like I mentioned. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out that we call the e-bulletin. And in the e-bulletin it's basically like the recreation guide. It gives you all of the art therapy classes it might be running. It tells you about any of the support groups that might be happening. Our dietitians put in some information for self-management. And then we have a brilliant team of librarians at BC Cancer who have created library pathfinders. So you can look up anything if you want to know about all of the research happening at BC Cancer on cannabis and cancer side effects. You can contact our librarians and they will give you the pathfinders for that. The other piece that our team is really working on right now is connecting with the clinicians and providers across the province. So we can provide clinical resources for healthcare professionals. We have research publications, like some of the work that Andrea Knox and her team are working on right now. And we have something monthly that we call the Supportive Care Rounds. So it is a presentation on any innovative or new research or practice that we invite care providers and clinicians from all around the province to come and attend. And I see some familiar faces here of people who do attend rounds. So with all of that in mind, let's go back to my two questions. And obviously you can ask your own, but these are my agenda. I want to know, how can BC Cancer increase awareness amongst clinicians and providers? And I'm going to change this a little bit. It's more about supportive care specific to cancer care in BC. Because as we know, Minister Dix, the Ministry of Health, has said in the cancer plan, we want to see more end-to-end supportive care services, and cancer care services. So how can we begin to have those conversations? And 2, how can BC Cancer improve knowledge about the self-management resources that have been released by BC Cancer to patients and caregivers, specifically those who are treated in community oncology networks closer to home? And I am ending my part of talking now to give lots of time to facilitate a discussion. So if you have any ideas about either of the 2 of these, or questions about what I have presented on, I would love to hear what you have to say. Yes, Anne.
Would you mind going back to the slide where you called it the beautiful...
Oh, the bow tie model.
No, the other one, what BC Cancer does for supportive care. You said, this is beautiful, and I'm just taking it from the website.
We plagiarized it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's got the 2 hands. I think it's one more, yeah.
So, if I can read from that, we offer a wide range of programs to help BC Cancer patients manage the blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Those with a cancer diagnosis and treatments.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Jen. Can you tell us what of those services are available at the Kamloops Con site?
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you go to that slide that has our province and we look at what BC Cancer operates, we operate the 6 sites. So part of the work that our team is working on right now, or focusing on right now, is ensuring that we have online resources. So, I mean, I can list them off because at this time I am the one who's putting together the e-bulletin, but there are online art therapy, group sessions, there is an online nutrition course that you can take. Yeah, there are online resources that are available with the specific idea or target audience in mind of people who live in spaces like Kamloops. For anybody who doesn't know me, I actually work I live here. I live in Kamloops and I haven't moved to the Lower Mainland so that I can keep in mind what it's actually like to live here. So a lot of the focus of the work that I've done at BC Cancer in the last 2.5 years is transitioning more services virtually to try to allow people like our friends here the opportunity to have access to those resources. No. I'm inviting it.
There's nothing available in person at the Kamloops Con site.
BC Cancer does not have supportive care staff at the Community Oncology Network in Kamloops. Interior Health, who operates that site, may have their own.
Can I share a statistic?
Yeah.
So I'm with the Kamloops Cancer Supportive Care Society, which Jen knows well. So this is why I can throw these questions at you. We just had a conversation with the social worker at the Kamloops Cancer Clinic, and she said the wait time for an appointment with a counsellor is 10 months.
Yeah.
So are there any plans to deal with that?
And I think, so one of the reasons why I made this slide is not to skirt your question, but it's to really make clear the scope of service delivery, right? So while our team works really hard to try to create online resources and clinician support tools to be able to help some of the staff here upskill their service delivery, what BC Cancer offers in Kamloops is an opportunity for some services closer to home. And those are curative services. But I hear what you're saying, and the other piece that the patient and family counseling team has told me is they do offer virtual service delivery for patients who are BC Cancer patients. And this is another project that we're working on right now. Go ahead, Danny.
Have you thought about reaching out to surgeons? Because I find that's most often the first step for people, and I've noticed massive gaps, and that's an opportunity where people could get some of this information right off the get-go, whether it's like a patient package that they're getting, they have the information, because it's incredibly overwhelming, which we're all know, we're not new to that, right? So is there something we could do to create that they can get? Obviously, I'm a big fan of patient navigation. We're a long ways from that, it seems, but what can we do in the meantime to support so they have this?
Yeah, and we do work with the surgeons. As I'm sure you're aware, BC Cancer doesn't provide surgery. And so, are you aware of a province-wide surgical distribution list? I know, neither am I. So, I asked the question honestly because maybe you are, but there is work underway that's happening, and again, that's one of the benefits of the cancer plan, is the ministry has created that as a priority, is that end-to-end alignment of the services that are of the cancer services that are being offered to people with cancer in British Columbia. But yes, I agree. Yes?
I'm just curious, you offer these supportive services across the province, but we know that some populations within the healthcare setting are underserved and are equity deserving, and their health outcomes are worse than dominant populations. So I'm just wondering if there are any supportive services for equity deserving populations that are more specific and targeted.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's such a good question. And I'm sure if Andrea is still on the call, she might answer a few of the research projects that are happening in that space, but the tangible elements that our team is working on. So we actually have a patient educator, somebody who specializes in health literacy. So we try to make sure that any of the information that we give to people who have cancer is readable. We try to make sure that it's at a grade 4 reading level or lower. We translate all of our resources to some of the main languages by region in British Columbia to make sure that it's more accessible for newcomers. In Vancouver, we have specialized services for Mandarin and Cantonese speaking populations. We are working on some programming for Punjabi speaking populations. We have spiritual health practitioner. We have some really neat services happening for adolescent and young adults to try to connect them to supportive care services quicker, specifically social work for practical support. So those are just a few of the elements that do come to top of mind. But this is something else, like BC Cancer does some specialized services, and they are actually all on the BC Cancer Supportive Care webpage. But those are some of the pieces that are distributed through the e-bulletin. And so part of the issue, and I know anybody who's delivered services know, part of the issue is making sure the information gets to the end user. So if anybody has any stellar ideas of how to increase that knowledge translation, I am all ears. Yes?
I just wanted your thoughts perhaps on this idea. Like we have a medical clinic and patients come in from a wide variety of different backgrounds. And I'm wondering if there is the ability to support clinics with a 20,000 foot view that allows, at the level that we have time, to actually engage with the end users and maybe other people sort of incidentally to improve, to be able to say, did you even know that, you've just been diagnosed with cancer, and in fact, I have a little card here. And these are the big ideas. And of course, you need to get up-to-date information, current information on whatever programs are there. So we don't want to, promise something that maybe is a program that's not a permanent program sort of thing. But if we knew better what was available and something we could put in our clinic to say, oh, we have a new diagnosis today, somebody coming through for cancer care at the clinic. Could I add to my discussion on the rest of the care, because we're about teams and building, to say these are some incredible highlights of what BC Cancer actually has available. Are you all interested? And they go, they do that? I had no idea. Like, I can access that virtually. It is available to me. And so I guess at the level of the clinic, one simple, not very expensive thing is a single card with a very brief 20,000 foot view of what I could engage with at the level and just pique that interest, get that curiosity, and maybe create an engagement point.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Yeah.
I work with Supporting Connections with Patient Society, or STEPS, and we own and operate Orchard Walk Medical Clinic, a clinic downtown, and the clinic up at Sunpeace. And what I've heard from our team is that it's really challenging when they don't get the upfront information before programs are rolled out. And I'm just wondering, is the physician, like the College of Physicians and Surgeons, is that a place where you could go to for your surgeon's list, a contact list? But I'm also thinking our team is connected longitudinally and provides services for 14,000 people. And that's going to likely increase to around 20,000 in the next year or two. And so when I think about that and I think about communication, as some themes before, maybe there is alignment through the existing, I'm even thinking about the Division of Family Practice across BC, health authorities, privileging. Like there are ways of connecting through existing programs, but I'm also thinking community health centers and that equity lens are positioned, and Ontario maybe is a better example because they're more established. But there's examples of that kind of communication channels and sharing that way. So that might be a useful and helpful. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm out of time. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing the achievements of BC Cancer Supportive Care Services.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Alicia Hamilton. I'm a registered social worker. I'm the coordinator of health services for the Ask Wellness Society. I moved to this beautiful land of Secwepemcúlecw in 1991. I'm so grateful to raise my family here, to learn, love, and work on this territory. So very grateful to be here today to share the voices of our people, some of the most vulnerable folks in Kamloops. Go ahead, thank you. So first, this is just an overview of health navigation. What's really cool about this is my contract is population health, one of the oldest contracts between Interior Health and the Ask Wellness Society. Started over 30 years ago as the AIDS Society of Kamloops. And so these are just a few of the things that we do. But most people in this room and the community know that we work with people that are marginalized. And the majority of the people that we work with are people that are substance users, and they're unhoused often. We do have lots of different housing buildings and supports. We can provide supports to absolutely anybody, no matter where they are, through outreach. So we will go to them. And so when I was compiling information for today, I reached out to the coordinators of the buildings. I reached out to the people with the lived experience, and I came up with a few overarching themes. Thank you. But first, I'd like to talk about my social location. So I'm a social worker. I went to TRU here, and this is what some of the amazing professors highlighted for me. Something to be aware of is my social location. So I am a third-generation European settler. Those are all my flags on the side there. I'm spiritual, but I'm assumed Christian. And what that means is that I don't wear any religious garments that would identify me otherwise. I'm a cisgendered female, and I present that way. I'm lower middle class. I am queer, but I'm in a heteronormative relationship, so I present that way, and I'm able-bodied. And what social work teaches us is that the dominant culture is the majority of these things. So the only thing that is a roadblock for me would be the fact that I'm female. Otherwise, this world is meant for me. And that is, on to the next one. That's because of these things. So I know intersectionality has been thrown out there today, loving that. But when we look at equity and care, these are some barriers, and these are the things that compile people to be who they are. So those are the list of all of them. Is a lot more than what I gave. And when we look at able-bodied individuals, I know that some people might think that that is a physical disability that you can see. But what I'm also talking about is substance use disorder. Substance use disorder and this opioid crisis is horrific. I think everybody knows that. But what you can find is that substance use disorder is not treated the same as any other disorder. And that can prevent people from accessing cancer care or healthcare in general. And so anyone that is a person of color or any of the other parts of this intersectionality is going to notice microaggressions. Now, microaggressions are small. They are not outward. It is not verbal. The way I can describe this is someone following a person of color around a store to make sure they don't steal. Now, if you can just imagine what that would feel like, it's just a point of stress on you all the time. So now everywhere you go, you receive microaggressions. Now, I don't think that these are always intentional. I think that this is, again, coming from your social location. How were you raised? How were you taught? It's not your fault, but it is your duty to witness that. So this is my theme, coming from my social work perspective, going into a couple of cases. Now, these are 2 specific cases, but they also represent quite a few people, okay? So this is from our MASH program, Mental Health Adult Supportive Program. So I work very closely with this program. So both these individuals have the Axis 1 diagnosis. That is a stipulation to be in the MASH program. So they're housed in low-income housing. These people were housed in the exact same building. They have access to all the same supports. And that means transportation, referrals. But what you can see is that case number 1 did not access these services. Now, we can't force it on people, but it's there. They had alcohol use disorder. And so when they go to an appointment, they smell of alcohol. And when they speak about their health concerns, they are treated that this is top, because this is what I can see, smell. My senses are telling me everything that you're going to talk about has to do with your alcohol use disorder. This person would not let staff in. I think we all know these people. They've created a shell around them. It's their protection, right? And then case number 2 is sort of the opposite in that way. They are welcoming, open. So the person, case number 1, unfortunately passed away from cancer with no treatment. They complained about numerous things that led to cancer. Unfortunately, none of those were looked at, and even just getting that person to talk to a doctor or anything was pulling teeth. So there's a couple factors, but that happened. Whereas in case number 2, that person has used substances before, but they're not currently using them. They luckily found, the doctor found the cancer early, and they're in treatment currently. And so these 2 cases are showing what it can be like to be marginalized. They are the same people, essentially, just 2 different levels of care. Thank you. Okay, now I'm gonna go with, this can speak for a lot of people, but these are also 2 very specific cases. They are almost identical. And so, when I say that they have a strong sense of community, what I mean by that is that they are well-known and well-loved in the community by us, service providers, but also their own community, okay? And that has some drawbacks. So it's great for them and it's great for us because we can find them easily. They kind of hang out in the same places. So case number 3 and 4 both state that they have terminal cancer. I kind of know for a fact that no doctor has told them this. And I don't know where this really comes from. I don't know if it's a delusion. I don't know if it's attention seeking. And I say that in the kindest way. Rebecca Sanford in one of our mental health classes was speaking about, if someone wants attention, give it to them. Like, why are we withholding attention from people? It's so silly. If someone's crying out for attention, why do we not give it to them? And so, unfortunately, case number 3 passed away. We're gonna have to go back. That's fine. Thank you. Passed away. And so the reason why I brought up the sense of community is because every person in that street community thinks that they died of terminal cancer. Now, this case number 4, I would love to get this person in for care, screening. I called the hospital. They were like, I'll set you up with the oncology social worker. The supports are there, like the care is there. But it would literally be a full-time job for me to track down this person and try and bring them to care. They are very unwell, and I would have to sit with them the entire time, which is not doable. And we know that our hospital is overburdened. And so, we'll go to the next one. Thanks. Let's go back one. Thanks. Okay, so when I first started in health navigation, I was given a case by one of our leaders. I should have known how difficult it was going to be. But this individual was probably the biggest insight into what it is like to access healthcare in Kamloops. So this person had chronic leg wounds, strep A and MRSA. And I fought so hard to get this person to access care, and we were getting there. But unfortunately, after a short stay in the hospital, they were unwilling to go back. And when I asked why, I said, let's go back, let's start at wound care. We can do this. Like, I know we can do this. Give me 3 months and your life will be different. They just said, I can't go. They hurt me too much. And I could read between the lines, and I wrote something, and I will not read this entire document, but what I wrote in honor of this person that I brought to both MLAs was something rarely talked about is the intergenerational effects of poverty, criminality, and substance use in European settlers in Canada. When one hears of substance use, the mind goes to narcotics. However, alcohol is the most accepted and controlled substance in Canada. In fact, bars and clubs are just supervised consumption sites for alcohol misuse. I question why Kamloops citizens are up in arms over open substance use of illicit drugs, but pay no mind to citizens drinking openly to the point of intoxication across the street. Alcohol causes violence, health problems, sexualized violence, and destroys families. It is only because our Western society deems alcohol misuse acceptable that it is. Many other societies do not. European families have been consuming alcohol for generations and allow that to be the norm for all social gatherings. I know it is in my family. When we look at substance use from a sociological perspective, alcohol is accepted in some families, whereas other substances, such as methamphetamines or opiates, can be accepted in some families. Try to imagine what sort of a chance the child is given when a mother uses in vitro. Family members use illicit drugs, experience criminalization, have access to the substances by dealing, have unsafe visitors that assault the child on occasion, or even offer up the child for transactional purposes. The intention of these scenarios is to allow for the term choice to be highlighted. Did this child have a choice to use substances? Is this child expected to be a functioning member of society when they were never given an option for a healthy life? Thank you. So I looked to one of my favorite trauma people, Besser van der Kolk, and this was a quote that came up. And so what I'm imploring everyone to do is to search for that child within every person that you see. And I know that this is a very welcoming room, but this is an overarching thing that I see is that they're stunted, and we all know that. And there's only one reason why we need to look at why people use drugs. It works. That's it. It's the hug they didn't get. It's the warmth in the middle of the night. It takes the screaming away for about 20 minutes with fentanyl until we need to use it again. Thank you. So I found a study on adverse childhood experiences because all of these people that I spoke about all had adverse childhood experiences. Now I will spare you the details of what they share with me. It's horrific. And so I'll let you read it. I don't need to read along with you, but 2 decades, it's pretty amazing. And so it creates and generates a public health burden that could not exceed all other root causes. It's just trauma beneath all of this. And the unfortunate part, and why I wrote this and brought it to the MLAs, was because I wanted to advocate for trauma care to be added to MSP. Trauma care is a privileged thing. I know I access it, I have benefits. People on MSP can go to the chiropractor, they can get massages and osteopathy. That's great. But when the damage is in that child, in that soul within, I don't see it being very helpful. Both MLAs told me the province would probably not go for it, but I'll keep trying. And so going back to Bessel van der Kolk, the ACE study has shown. So it is the single most preventative cause of a lot of these factors that are going to prevent someone to accessing care, and then also to our physical health. I mean, there's empirical evidence to show that. So what can be done? I know this is a heavy topic. I appreciate you all paying attention. So what can be done is that recognition of your own social location. It is not your fault the way you were raised, but you are in control of that now. And what does that look like? A trauma-informed practice. And if that means looking at people that use substances or that come in, it's got that shell, you can see it. Please be mindful of that. It's not against you. I know you're trying to help. Okay, so then acknowledging that colonial practices still happen today, okay? It's everywhere. This world is meant for people like me, and I'm grateful for that, but this is why I need to elevate the voices of the others. We need parity for physical and mental health. We know that it is not happening. Physical health and mental health are separate entities, which is why the study is showing that it is impacting the physical health is so important to me. The thing that's most important for me at Ask Wellness, I don't dress like this at Ask Wellness. I dress very casually. Now, I know a lot of people in the helping profession wear scrubs and things like this. I'm certainly not asking you to put on a backwards baseball cap or start rapping any sort of things like that. That's not going to work. That's too far that other way. But really, you can just speak to people. One thing, the very first day that I started, there was some people sitting on the ground and the outreach worker training me just knelt down, like just removing that. And so the clothing, the way you speak, all of these things are reducing barriers. There's not a big difference between me personally and professionally because it works. I've developed the most special relationships in my life by just being myself with these people because they can suss out who's not being real and they won't interact with you. So just be yourself. You don't have to be anybody else. Do confront your personal biases because we all have them. And then as I was compiling this information about cancer care and the people that I know will never make it to that care or that I can't physically sit with them, I mean, health navigation, we do that, but I know we know ER times are about 10 to 12 to 15 hours. I can't sit there for that long. But it made me think about the opportunity to utilize peers. I have 2 peers on my team, and peers are some of our greatest assets at Ask Wellness. They've walked the walk, they've done the work, and now they're here to work with us to give that lived experience that we just don't always have. A lot of people do, but not everybody does. So I thought, could there be an opportunity to utilize peers, especially for ER visits? Is there a potential for Interior Health and Ask Wellness to collaborate, to have individuals that get it? And they can, because a big part of my job is also debriefing with people. Like, here's what I heard. Because speaking medical jargon to somebody is just too much, and this is a diagnosis and all these things, it's a lot. So I offer debriefing afterwards. Maybe we're going for coffee or something like that. But this was an idea that I came up with. It may already exist. I don't think it does. Last time I took case number 3 into the hospital. I packed up their safe supply, put it in a stock, put it in a little wheelchair that they were going in for. I sat with them as long as I could. The triage nurse said, "You need to stay this entire time." And I said, "Well, it's 3:00 and I have children. I can't do that." "Well, you should, because that's how this person will get the adequate care." And I said, "Okay." Unfortunately, a community member kind of came up and followed us up, and I just tagged him in and left. But what had happened was, when they finally made it through, and this is the person that died that everyone's going to think died from cancer, and I still don't know, and I'll never know. When they got in and were seen by the doctor just stated, if you're here for a prescription, don't bother. You're not going to get it from me. And the person left. And they never accessed care again. And so I don't know if this person had cancer or not, but I would like to find out if case number 4 has cancer or not. So that will be my next journey. I appreciate you all so much and allowing for me to speak for our most vulnerable citizens. Any questions? Are we not doing questions? One question. Who wants it? Hi. I'll tell you. The wins you hang on to for 6 months sometimes. And the losses you grieve. I've been in this role for 3 years. I've lost 14 people that were very close to me. These people are quick to give the I love yous. They give the hugs. They tell you everything about themselves. So why would I not share things about myself? Why am I not going to tell them that I'm having a hard day? Or that I'm off? Or that I'm grieving? We're just people. And when you get a major win, you hang on to it for as long as you can. Thank you. I appreciate the question. Oh, you're so sweet. You're going to make me start going now. Thanks, everyone.
One set of questions on one side, another question on the other side. And again, at the end of that will come kind of idea. This is language. So we want to have two more language.
I'm editing so bad.
It's better than mine.
Okay.
Our project breaks that social education on engaging with your patient. And then they have more time to get with their, get on to within a community setting. Could be really helpful because if you're thinking about legal, financial, and all these things, the services are, when you're done, you don't know what you don't know. So like you're done and then you go and you don't even know what.
If you can get it. It's not simple.
We have spent a lot of time trying to translate or it's too overwhelming to provide adequate care. We're relying on our patients to
take that out, because otherwise people are being set up to ask for a whole team of people to be accountable and share accountability when they might say.
In some places very to help them with what's eventually right.
So great. At least we know what
so, okay, everybody. And are you all
They don't even know what people will agree to be accountable to.
You know, transportation, what does transportation look like?
So it's like, that's a tough one, right? So how do you...
Ongoing communication between patients, that care, a supportive environment that encourages ongoing communication.
Cancer support care.
And we are using that to empower and shape the cancer care policies and recommendations in our region.
Let me now invite Prashant Kumar Pradhan and Professor Nova to lead the World Café discussions on enhancing cancer care in socio-cycle oncology.
Thanks, I think so. Melba, do you want to pick off something or? Okay. So we'll not make it heavier for you guys. I mean, you are sitting here since morning and it's a very long day, I know. So we will just make it a quick interactive session. So in the next room, you would have seen some of these reports and assessments, research that we have done. So based on these, we just want to collect some more feedback, more thoughts from you. If you want to have a look, you can have a look after the meeting in the next room, and you will have this set of paper on your table. So I would like you to just give you a quick introduction about me. My name is Prashant, and I do data analysis for Melba, but when I'm not doing data analysis and study, I am a professional skydiver. And why I just want to give you a brief background about this. And it's quite relatable to cancer journey, because when I was reading this data that I just showed you, there is a cancer patient journey map that we created. So how it starts when a person finds, okay, I got cancer. He got shocked and he doesn't know like what to do now. And they are just running here and there. They go to family and friends to search for the information, what to do next. In the same scenario, I can relate this even to the cancer patient journey. When I was learning skydiving, there was one incident when my parachute did not open. And that time I had to pull my emergency parachute. So that time I was shocked. The first thought that came into my head is like, am I going to die today? So I think when cancer patient got the same situation, they are also dealing that kind of anxiety, like what's going to happen next? Am I gonna die? What will happen to my friends, my family, my parents, or everything? So I think that sort of situation can happen, and people just don't want to deal that kind of big anxiety. They need some solution. They need something where I go forward, where I do look for the information. Oh, is there any resource, reliable resource, where I can go and search for the information? So in order to do that, we also did some data analysis. We also did some qualitative and quantitative analysis. We prepared reports, and based on that, we found some guiding questions, and we also provided some recommendations that you will find next. So we wanted your opinion as well, your eyes, your thought as well. Like, what do you think? How relatable they are? Are they good? Are they bad? Or these are just useless? I have my own opinion. So what I would like you to do, you can just take your handset or your laptop and go to menti.com and enter this code, or you can scan the QR code as well. It's very easy. If you have any challenges, let me know. So it's very easy. Go open your camera, scan this QR code. That will open a link. In that link, you will see, slide. So once you are done, let me know, and then we will take it from there. Or you can, if you can't scan the QR code, you can use the menti.com and enter this code. So the code is 81329044. And if you don't want to use this handset or laptop, you can use pen and paper. And we have this set of printed copy for you. You can read questions here as well, and you can answer by using pen and paper if you are not with your handset or laptop. Yeah, so we go to the next slide now. And as we move forward, you will see your information on your handset will also change. Now you can see the introduction, a quick introduction, what we are discussing now. And so you already know about the theme, you already know about the topic, what we are discussing today, and then we'll go to the next slide. So we started with the prevention and detection. So we have been talking about how to prevent, how to detect cancer and all of these things. So the question is, how can we effectively integrate advanced screening technologies to improve early detection rates, especially in underrepresented communities? So there are 5 options on your screen, and you can just rate them. Which one you think is the most important solution? And you can just rate, strongly agree to disagree. From 1 to 5, you can just use that slider from left to right, and you can vote. And as you are voting, we can also see the result on the screen. And once you are done with all 5 options, you can just go down and submit. Yeah, I see everyone is done. So yeah, 4.7% is the 4.7 is the rating for development of community outreach program targeting underrepresented group. Yes, and I think we have already seen the response during our group discussion as well. So we can move to the next slide now, which is again the second important question, and with some recommendations. So this one is saying what strategies can be implemented to increase awareness and education about cancer prevention across diverse demographic groups. There are again 5 options, and you can quickly read them, and you can just on a scale of 1 to 5 give your best answer, and then we can take them. Okay, so the last one here, addressing all aspects of breast cancer treatment, including psychological support. Yeah. Okay, so now we can move to the next one if you guys are done. Yeah. So the third question again the under the prevention and detection is what role can digital health tools play in enhancing cancer prevention and detection? We have already talked about AI technology, use of information sharing platforms. So that can also helpful. Again, 5 answers for you. You can recommend which one you want to score 5 or 1. Okay, so now we are mostly done with this question. We can move to the next one. This one says, how can we ensure equitable access to prevention and screening services across different socioeconomic and geographic regions? So now we can see that whatever discussion we have had so far, these are all covering. And again, you can have a rating scale against these 5 questions, 5 recommendations. Advocating for policy changes to reduce healthcare inequalities. So now we can move to the next one. And this is the last one under prevention and detection, which says what partnership can be established to bolster community-based cancer prevention efforts. There are 5 options based on the data analysis that we have done. Generate. Healthcare access for lower income and less educated affected persons. So we can move to the next one now. And this is an open-ended question for you. Like, if you agree or disagree with some of the recommendations that we have provided, or if you have your own thought, you can write here. And we can use that as a feedback as well. So each question has 4 or 5 recommendations, but if you see I have more thoughts, which you can select from here, you can write and submit. There are a larger number of care providers to reduce wait time. Okay. Providing navigation is the key to implementing effective supportive care for patients and their families. Access and use of cancer prevention is given in the rural marginalized area. So we got some responses. So this was for prevention and detection. We got 6 responses. Individual responses, we got your rating scale. We'll move to the next one now quickly. And this is about the treatment and supportive services. In the same way that we did for prevention and detection, you will have one question on your screen. And this was about treatment and supportive care. So the question is, what are the current barriers to accessing cancer treatment and how can they be addressed? One is effectively address the economic burden. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options, 6 options actually in this one. Based on the patient's voice and data analysis, these are the recommendations. You can rate again, submit. The collaboration with pharmaceutical companies for affordable innovative treatments. Yeah, that got 5. Okay. Now we can move to the next one. The second set of question under treatment and supportive service is what role can community support groups play in enhancing the quality of life for cancer patients? Leveraging machine learning and predictive analytics. That's quite impactful actually, but you can rate and you can submit. Diverse cultural practices to meet psychosocial and educational needs. Document 8. Okay. Now we can move to the next set of questions if you guys are done. So the second question under treatment and supportive service is, how can we enhance the integration of palliative care into cancer treatment plan? Again, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 options here. 7 recommendations, you can rate them. Promoting personalized survivorship and providing supportive care. Now we can move to the next one. And under treatment and supportive service, the third question is, what innovative treatment options such as precision medicine, immunotherapy, etc., can be more accessible? Leveraging telehealth solution or developing health literacy. Yeah, again, you have 6 recommendations. Let's provide your rating. Cancer innovation with interdisciplinary healthcare professionals to generate informed contextual practice. 4.7. So now we can quickly move to the third set of questions under treatment and supportive services, which is about the mental health support. How can mental health support be effectively incorporated into cancer care? There are 5 or 6 recommendations. I see distinct needs of affected person based on their living situation, and introducing culturally sensitive care practice for indigenous and people. Okay, so we can move to the next slide now. Again, the open-ended comment box for you. If you want to share your thoughts, you can share here. Support is provided with better, even if people are not able to receive. At least the option is there and we have. Portions in both public and private need to be on cooperation of enforcement. Now we go to responses. We can move to the next one, which is primary care and community support care, which is the last one. And we again have a few options, recommendations in the same way. So the first question under primary care and community support care is, how can primary care be strengthened to play a more active role in cancer care? Training and resources for primary care providers or support programs. Again, you have 6 recommendations. You can provide your rating. Support program and financial assistance for caregivers, training and resources for primary care providers in cancer management. Establishing policies and investing in technology infrastructure to ensure integration. We have discussed. Here we can move to the next one under primary care and community support. So the next question under this one is, what are effective models for community-based cancer care? And you have 5, 6 recommendations. You can provide your rating. This is the third question of this one. We have your responses under primary care and community support. So we will go to the open-ended slide because we are running short of time. So we'll go to the next one. Next one. Next one. And you can provide your thoughts and additional recommendations for primary care and community support care. If you think that there are recommendations that you think will be included in the report or the assessment, you can write your comments. So I like the idea of a hub in Kamloops and think we might want to investigate municipal involvement. Community care, community cancer supporting center for practice. Okay. Appreciation for Melba and Brian. Okay. And something like 811 broader info, workshop for primary caregivers who never experienced caring for someone without cancer. Okay. Thank you so much for your responses and your time. So we are done with this exercise. Now we'll hand it over to Melba and Ashwin now.
Now I would like to kindly invite Professor Rani Srivastava, the Dean of the School of Nursing, British Columbia, to deliver the closing ceremony remarks for the summit.
Thank you, Ashwin. I don't have a lot of closing ceremonies, but I just wanted to have an opportunity to say thank you. In terms of concluding, I had an opportunity to be part of a little bit in the beginning. I'd hoped to be able to participate a little bit more, but I know every time I popped up, the energy in the room was fantastic in terms of the kinds of conversations. And I think listening to it in the morning and hearing how important this work is, from the various perspectives, I was really impressed with the diversity of groups that are in the room today and the perspectives that are presented. And when I think about how we're going to make things better for those we serve, our patients and our families and our communities, it really is through those community partnerships. So I want to take this opportunity to thank both Dr. D'Souza and Dr. Fair for hosting this summit. TRU School of Nursing is delighted to be a partner in this, that both are very valued colleagues. And I think when we do this work, it is so consistent with the mission and the vision of TRU as well as the School of Nursing. As nurses, we care for people, we work with people and with communities. And it is your input and your ideas that will generate the evidence that we need to move the agenda forward. So thank you, all of you, for being here. I know that it's been a full day. I know it's been a busy day. And we're really, really grateful to have all of your perspectives. And the students, well, I was going to get to that. And I think it's been really amazing to see, again, when you have an event like this, you see the hours and in fact, months and years of work that happens, right? Because through the studies, when you kind of look at getting those partnerships going and having all of our students, our research assistants and our students involved in that is, again, a really wonderful opportunity for you to learn. Look forward to your perspectives. But also as you grow in your career, I hope that this gives you a really solid grounding for how important the partnerships are, how important it is to hear the voices and the perspectives and the expertise that different people bring. We all bring different expertise, and it's very easy to say, yes, this is, it's funny, I love doing a lot of work in the cross-cultural diversity work from the very beginning. And one of the things I always said is somehow when health professionals have it, we say it's knowledge and evidence-based. And when it would come from patients and families, we'd say, oh yes, those are your beliefs. And I would say, no, actually, that is your knowledge and expertise, right? All evidence to some extent is flawed, nothing is perfect, and all evidence is informed. And so as we learn more about the different perspectives, the different knowledge people bring, and also different ways of knowing that comes to the table, it is really, really critical. So thank you for coming. And I think when this kind of work happens, it's amazing for our students. I know that we don't have a lot of our nursing students in the room today, but I know this is being recorded, that we have an opportunity to share. And just knowing that this is happening and us being able to talk about it, I think really sets the stage for emphasizing the importance of this work and the importance of the partnership. And I think, I'm just thrilled that we were able to host it here. We moved into this lovely building 3 years ago now, during COVID, July of 2020. And part of the whole design was always to think about how do we use this beautiful space to bring community in, to create that kind of dialogue for summits like this on an ongoing basis. And so I look forward to the next one since we said declared it. This is now a thing, right? Absolutely a thing. So once again, I'm not gonna, you've had a long day and lots of ideas buzzing. So thank you for letting me have a few moments to express my gratitude to all of you. And I look forward to seeing you all at the second annual summit next year.